Tonight, as winter settles softly over the world, and the last traces of daylight fade into a calm velvety blue, let us step together into a story carried on cold winds and quiet hopes. Imagine the hush of snow falling over distant towns, the gentle rumble of an old steam train waiting under gas lamps, and the tender heartbeat of a child holding on to a single question: where will I belong when the sun rises again? Welcome to the Christmas Orphan Train, a winter journey across America in 1902. A tale of frost-lit tracks, small-town lanterns glowing like stars, and the fragile courage of children crossing the country in search of a home on a Christmas week that would change their lives forever. But before we drift deeper into the gentle rhythm of the rails and the warm glow of memory, I want to greet all of you watching tonight. To everyone in the U.S., and from the snowy Midwest to the quiet coasts, to those in Europe wrapped in evening warmth or early morning calm, and to viewers joining from every corner of the world, wherever winter or summer finds you. Thank you for being here. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? I always love seeing the beautiful mix of places, times, and stories our community brings together. If you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and leave a gentle comment so this cozy little story finds its way to more dreamers who might need rest tonight. Now, before we begin this long, soothing journey, take a moment to settle in. Dim the lights, adjust your pillows, let the warmth of a blanket gather around you. Allow your breathing to slow just a little, and let your mind drift toward the soft glow of lanterns waiting at an old station on a winter night. Snow drifted in slow, unhurried spirals over the New York Children's Aid Society station, settling on wooden crates, worn suitcases, and the boots of dozens of small travelers huddled together for warmth. The air tasted faintly of cold smoke and cold iron, and every breath rose like a tiny cloud before disappearing into the evening. Around them, the station lamps glowed through the falling snow, halos of soft amber light that made the world feel quieter, gentler, despite the shiver of uncertainty hanging in the air. Tucked beneath the awning, 11-year-old Clara Beaumont drew her thin wool coat tighter around her. She had polished her shoes the night before, hoping their shine might help her look just a little more adoptable, though one scuffed heels stubbornly refused to cooperate. A small carpet bag hung from her wrist holding everything she owned: an extra pair of stockings, a tin cup, and a folded paper star she'd cut from an old newspaper. The star crackled softly inside the bag whenever she moved, a tiny reminder of the promise she had whispered to herself. Something good will happen this Christmas. It has to. Beside her, younger children shifted restlessly, rubbing their hands together for warmth. Some spoke in soft, hopeful voices. Others stayed silent, watching the steam rise from the locomotive as if it were a living creature, preparing to swallow them whole. Clara watched the swirling plumes of white vapor curl into the sky, feeling the faint vibration of the engine deep in her stomach. That train would carry them west across towns, rivers, plains, toward a future none of them could yet imagine. The matron, bundled in a heavy cloak, walked slowly along the line of children, her footsteps crunching in the snow. She paused to tuck scarves more snugly around thin necks, to pull hats lower over little ears, to reassure trembling shoulders with a gentle pat. Her voice was quiet but steady as she reminded them that families were waiting farther along the route. Families who had asked for help, who might choose one of these children to take home for Christmas. A gust of wind moved through the station, sending a shiver through the group. The scent of burning coal grew stronger as the conductor signaled that departure was approaching. Somewhere down the platform, a bell chimed once, clear and cold as the winter night. Clara lifted her chin, watching other children board, their boots tapping softly on the metal step. She took a breath and held it for a moment. She didn't know where she'd end up, or whether anyone would want a girl her age, but the promise of the journey. The possibility of a warm kitchen, a name spoken softly, a bed of her own glowed like a lantern in her chest. When the matron finally called her name, Clara stepped forward. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes. The platform beneath her vibrated with the slow, steady beating of the engine, a heartbeat that seemed to welcome her aboard. And with one more glance at the station behind her, she climbed into the warmth of the Orphan train, letting its doors close gently on the life she was leaving behind. The warmth inside the Orphan train wrapped around Clara like a woolen blanket the moment she stepped through the door. The smell of pinewood panels, cold heat, and the faint sweetness of peppermint candies passed earlier among the youngest children mingled into a comforting hush that softened the edges of her nerves. Frost feathered the windows in delicate patterns, turning the world beyond the glass into a shifting blur of white and gray as the train slowly lurched into motion. Clara chose a seat near the middle of the car beside a girl who looked about her age with chestnut braids and a small, determined chin. "I'm Anna," the girl said softly, smoothing the hem of her dress as if trying to press out invisible wrinkles. Clara nodded. Clara, they exchanged shy smiles, the kind children learn quickly when words feel too heavy or uncertain. Around them, children settled in with the cautious quiet of those who have learned to expect sudden change. A few little ones pressed their faces to the frosty glass, giggling each time their breath fogged the pane. Others curled into the seats, cradling threadbare dolls or bundles wrapped in faded fabric. Every now and then, a soft tremble of the train hummed beneath their feet. A steadying rhythm that promised movement, promised distance, promised something new. Lanterns hung from brass hooks above the aisle, casting warm pools of golden light over the rows of seats. That glow flickered gently with each sway of the carriage, brushing over the children's faces, softening their expressions, and giving the illusion of a cozy parlor rather than a crowded travel car. Clara let her fingertips rest against the wooden armrest, feeling its smooth grain worn from decades of journeys. Outside, the world dimmed into deeper blues. Snowflakes stir like tiny sparks, catching the lantern light before vanishing back into the winter night. The rhythmic clatter of wheels against tracks settled into a hypnotic pulse, steady, soothing, like the faraway hum of a lullaby. Clara felt her breath gradually matched that rhythm, slow and soft. The matron moved down the aisle, checking on each child with quiet patience. At Clara's row, she paused long enough to tuck a blanket around Anna, then offered Clara another with a kind, almost motherly nod. The wool was scratchy but warm, holding the scent of cedar and faint lavender, perhaps stored for months in trunks before being brought out for this journey. Clara pulled the blanket to her chin, feeling its weight anchor her. She looked across the aisle and watched as a small boy, perhaps 5, finally drifted to sleep. His cheek pressed against the window, breath forming tiny circles on the frosted glass. His mittened hand twitched occasionally as though he were already dreaming of a home he hadn't yet seen. A distant whistle echoed through the night, long and low. The train picked up speed, moving deeper into the winter darkness, carrying them farther from the familiar and closer to the unknown. Clara leaned her head back, listening to the soft symphony of murmurs, crackling lanterns, and the gentle shush of snow outside. Despite everything, despite the uncertainty, the ache of leaving the city behind, she felt something warm unfurl inside her. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the rails carry her into the first night of the journey, a night that stretched out like a quiet promise. By morning, the world outside the train had changed into a vast, open, quiet. Clara awoke to the gentle sway of the carriage and the soft hiss of steam curling along the edges of the frosted windows. The sky beyond the glass had lightened into a pearl-gray dawn, the kind that seemed to hum with winter's breath, pale and endless. Snow-covered plains stretched out in every direction, so wide, so still, they looked like an untouched quilt laid over the earth. The children stirred one by one, the car filling with the soft rustle of blankets, sleepy murmurs, and the tiny tapping sounds of boots adjusting on the floorboards. Clara sat upright, brushing a strand of hair away from her cheek, as Anna blinked awake beside her. "It feels like we're in the middle of nowhere," Anna whispered, her voice raspy with sleep. Clara leaned slightly toward the window, wiping a small circle into the fog with her mitten. "Maybe nowhere is quieter than somewhere," she said softly, watching the plains pass in slow, endless stretches. The snow outside shimmered faintly, catching hints of dawn light like powdered glass. In the distance, the silhouettes of bare trees stood like lone sentinels, their branches etched dark against the pale sky. The matron moved gently through the aisle, her footsteps softened by the train's steady rumble. She carried a tin kettle and a stack of small tin cups, the metal clinking faintly with each step. One by one, she poured warm, slightly sweetened milk into the children's cups, something to start their day, something familiar, something comforting. When Clara wrapped her fingers around her cup, she felt the warmth seep instantly into her palms. The steam rose in tiny ribbons, carrying a scent that reminded her faintly of the bakery on 5th Street, the one she used to pass on her way to school before life had turned uncertain. She took a slow sip. The warmth spread through her chest like a quiet ember. Outside, the plains whispered under the wind, their silence so deep that it seemed to cradle the train rather than resist it. Every now and then, Clara caught glimpses of tiny farmhouses far in the distance, chimneys releasing thin threads of smoke into the sky. They looked so small, so gentle, as though each one held stories and breakfasts and families that had never known her name, yet something about them stirred her heart. Anna leaned closer to the window. "Do you think we'll stop at one of those towns?" she asked. Clara nodded softly, though she wasn't sure. "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe someone there is waiting for us." The train groaned gently as it shifted along a curve, revealing a more of the plains. The tracks glinted faintly beneath the snow-dusted sky. The vibration beneath their feet deepened, steady and soothing, like a heartbeat guiding them forward. Clara took another sip of warm milk, breathing in its subtle sweetness. She listened to the mix of sounds around her, the faint clinking of metal cups, the murmur of children waking, the sigh of wind brushing against the carriage, and beneath it all the low steady pulse of the rails carrying them farther into winter's hush. She didn't know what waited for her across these plains, but for the first time in a long while, she felt the horizon calling gently to her, like a hope-shaped whisper tucked into the wind. By midday, the soft pearly sky of morning had begun to deepen into a muted steel gray. The lanterns inside the train flickered more visibly now, their warm glow contrasting sharply with the darkening world outside. Clara pressed her fingertips lightly to the window pane. The glass felt colder than before, so cold it sent a small shiver up her arm. Snowflakes drifted past the windows, slow at first, then more purposeful, like tiny white messengers, being swept along by a growing wind. The plains, so still earlier, now stirred restlessly beneath the shifting sky. Anna watched the change, too. The matron said, "We might get a little weather," she murmured. Clara nodded. "It looks like more than a little." Her breath fogged the window as she spoke, weaving delicate frost spirals across the glass. The train's rhythm remained steady, reassuring, reliable, but the air carried a subtle tension like a held breath. The conductor walked through the car, adjusting a side latch, checking the lantern hooks, and offering the children a calm, practiced smile. It helped, even if only a little. A low rumble of wind brushed along the sides of the train, making the wooden panels creak softly. Clara listened, her imagination painting the storm as a giant gently testing the carriage. Curious, but not yet fierce. She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, letting its weight ground her. "Do storms get this big out here?" a younger boy asked from across the aisle, his tiny voice trembling. The matron knelt beside him, her cloak pooling around her like a dark, warm nest. "Out on the plains," she said gently. "Storms can move quickly, but the railroad knows these tracks well. This train has crossed winters much worse than this one." Her voice was a steady lantern in the growing dusk. The children settled again, reassured, but Clara kept watching the skies. She couldn't look away. There was something mesmerizing in the way the snow thickened, drifting sideways now, each flake catching the light like a fleeting spark. In the distance, the horizon blurred into a swirling haze of white and gray, a veil of winter drawing softly across the land. Inside, the warmth from the cold stove spread in gentle waves. It smelled of pine smoke and iron, a familiar comfort. Clara held her hands near it for a moment, letting the heat seep into her palms and fingertips. When she returned to her seat, Anna had opened her small cloth satchel. "Want one?" Anna whispered, holding out a ginger cookie wrapped in paper. Clara's eyes widened slightly. "You saved those?" Anna nodded. "I thought maybe we'd need something nice today." Clara accepted the cookie carefully, as though it was something precious. The scent of ginger rose softly in the air, warm and spicy, a small reminder of kitchens and holidays and things that once felt ordinary. When she took a bite, the taste was comforting, sweet, crumbly, carrying just a hint of molasses. Outside, the wind picked up. The train rocked gently as it pressed forward, forging its way into the heart of the storm. The snow, now a sweeping curtain of white, wrapped around the windows until the plains vanished completely from sight. Yet inside the car, surrounded by warmth and murmured conversations and the soft rustle of blankets, Clara felt something strange, a mixture of unease and wonder, as though the storm were both a challenge and a quiet guardian watching over their journey. The storm was coming, but so Clara realized was something else. The next part of their story. By early afternoon, the snowstorm had fully wrapped itself around the train. The windows glowed faintly, not with scenery, but with the pale reflection of swirling white. It was as though the world outside had vanished into a soft, endless veil. The steady clatter of the wheels was muffled now, cushioned by the thick blanket of snow covering the tracks. The entire train seemed to hum in a quieter, deeper way, like a lullaby played just for them. Inside the car, lanterns were turned up a little brighter. Their golden glow pulled along the wooden walls and cast warm halos on the children's bundled forms. Clara watched one lantern sway slightly with the motion of the train, its flame bending but never going out. The tiny flicker felt like a companion keeping watch over them. The matron guided a few of the younger children into a circle near the coal stove, their cheeks pink with warmth as they settled on thick cushions placed on the floor earlier, forming a little patch of comfort amid the storm's whispers. Clara and Anna remained in their seats, but leaned in close, listening. One little boy asked quietly, "Are we safe?" The matron smiled gently, smoothing his hair. "Storms can be loud and full of surprises," she said in her calm, reassuring tone. "But this train has carried many children through many winters, and I am right here with you." Her voice carried a soothing rhythm, slow, steady, like the rocking of the carriage itself. The children relaxed, and a soft hush settled over the group as she began humming a tune. It was an old lullaby, one Clara had heard once long ago, but could barely remember. Still, the melody felt familiar, as though it belonged to winter itself. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the gentle sound wash over her. The scent of pine wood and coal thickened pleasantly in the warm air. Little breaths and whispers floated through the room like tiny snowflakes, soft, delicate, comforting. When she opened her eyes again, she noticed Anna holding a small knitted glove. "Only one. My little sister made it," Anna whispered before Clara could ask. Before she got too sick." Her voice wavered, but didn't break. "I keep it with me, because I think she'd want to see the places I'll go." Clara reached out and touched the edge of the glove. Its yarn soft and fuzzy. "It's beautiful," she said gently. "I'm glad you brought it." Anna smiled faintly, the lantern light reflecting in her eyes. "Maybe I'll have a place where I can keep it safe. On a shelf, maybe, or by a window." Clara nodded, her heart swelling with a blend of sadness and hope. "You will," she whispered. "You'll find one." The train rocked again, a little more firmly this time, as if nudged by a strong gust outside. A few children tensed, but the matron's humming softened their worried breaths, drawing them back into calm. The conductor passed through the car soon after, brushing snow from his coat. "Storm's a spirited one," he said kindly, "but we're making good time. You children are doing just fine." His presence, steady and sure, was another lantern in the storm. Clara watched him go, then turned her gaze back to the window. Even though the storm had swallowed the world beyond, she felt strangely sheltered, surrounded by warm faces, warm lights, warm voices. The storm was powerful, but so was the little world inside this train car. And as the wheels continued their soft rhythm beneath them, Clara felt a new certainty forming quietly inside her. This journey was bigger than fear, bigger than the storm, bigger than the past they had left behind. It was leading them somewhere, somewhere new, somewhere meant for them. As afternoon leaned slowly toward evening, the storm outside shifted. It didn't stop. The snow still fell in thick, swirling waves, but its fierce push softened into something more measured, more rhythmic. The children noticed the change in the way the light settled on the windows, the way the train's movement grew smoother again, gliding forward with a gentler hum. Clara lifted her blanket and sat up straighter, watching the frost on the window melt in tiny rivulets from the warmer air inside. Beyond the softened white blur, she thought she could see faint shapes. Trees, perhaps, or distant hills, but they appeared and vanished like ghosts behind a curtain. Inside the car, the afternoon hush deepened into a wintry quiet. The matron encouraged the children to stretch their legs, and walk carefully down the aisle. Boots tapped softly on the wooden floorboards as a few brave ones shuffled up and down, steadying themselves on the seat backs. Clara stayed where she was, letting her senses soak in the peaceful lull, the gentle crackle of the cold stove, the faint rustle of coats being adjusted, the quiet breaths of children half asleep, their heads resting on bundled scarves. Anna yawned beside her. "Feels like the storm is getting tired," she murmured. Clara smiled. "Maybe it's taking a nap." The thought made Anna giggle softly, the sound barely louder than the whisper of snow outside. A few minutes later, the conductor returned, dusted with fine snow. He leaned close to the matron and spoke in low tones, though Clara could hear enough to understand. "Wind's easing," he said. "We'll be stopping at Brimstone Crossing soon. Water the engine, check the wheels, let the storm pass a bit." Brimstone Crossing. The name stirred a flutter of curiosity in Clara's chest. She imagined a tiny stop in the middle of nowhere, a lantern-lit water tower. Maybe a small cabin for workers, snow drifting over silent tracks. A place that existed only for moments like this when winter demanded a pause. The matron nodded. "Thank you," she replied softly. "It will be good for them to stretch." Clara's imagination filled in the details, stepping down onto crunchy snow, seeing her breath in the cold air, hearing the lonely call of the wind through the trees. The idea made her heart feel light, almost excited. But for now, the train continued to glide forward, its warm interior glowing like a drifting hearth through the winter storm. The conductor moved down the aisle and paused at Clara's row. "You two doing all right?" he asked gently. Anna nodded. "Yes, sir," Clara added. "Is Brimstone Crossing far?" "Just a short while now," he said with a grin that warmed the space around him. "You'll know it when we get there. It's a quiet spot, but it's a good one." He tipped his hat and moved on, his boots sounding steady against the wooden floor. Clara turned to Anna. "Do you think they'll let us out for a moment?" Anna shrugged, her eyes bright. "Maybe just to breathe some fresh air, even if it's cold." The thought of stepping briefly into the snowy stillness filled Clara with a gentle thrill like opening a door into another world. She imagined the snowflakes landing on her coat, each one a tiny sculpture melting into warmth. Around them, children settled back into their seats, wrapped again in blankets. The train hummed forward, the storm whispering along its sides like a lullaby. Even the lantern flames seemed to sway more softly now, their golden light casting peaceful halos across the rows of sleepy faces. Clara leaned her head against the window, letting the coolness touch her temple. She felt safe in that moment, held between the warmth inside and the soft winter beyond. Soon the train would stop. Soon the next chapter of their journey would open. But for now she let the gentle rhythm carry her, calm and unhurried. The train's steady rhythm gradually slowed, the wheels easing into a softer glide as the storm outside thinned into gentle flurries. Clara felt the change before she understood it. First in the way the lantern light trembled less, then in the subtle quiet that settled over the car like a winter shawl. The conductor's voice drifted through the aisle moments later. "Brimstone Crossing ahead," he called softly. "We'll stop for a short rest. Stay close to the train." The children stirred, their eyes brightening with curiosity. Clara felt a small flutter in her chest. Not quite excitement, not quite nervousness, but something warm and searching. Anna squeezed her hand gently, fingers cold but eager. As the train glided to a stop, the snowflakes outside gathered again in swirling patterns, dancing like tiny white moths around the glow of the engine. Through the frosted window, Clara saw a wooden water tower, its beams coated with snow, and a small lantern hanging from a hook, its flame flickering bravely against the wind. Beyond it, the plains stretched out in soft, muted shades of silver and blue. The door at the front of the car opened with a low creak, letting in a brief gust of cold air, scented with pine and distant storms. The matron stepped out first, her cloak billowing slightly. She turned back to the children. "A few at a time," she said in her calm, warm voice. "Just a moment to stretch your legs." Clara and Anna were in the second group, allowed outside. They stepped carefully down the metal steps, their boots sinking into fresh powdery snow. The cold wrapped around Clara instantly, sharp but invigorating. Her breath blossomed into the air in soft white clouds. The world felt beautifully still. Only the quiet hiss of the engine and the muffled whisper of wind disturbed the silence. The snow beneath Clara's feet gave a delicate crunch, a crisp sound she hadn't heard in years. For a moment, she closed her eyes and simply breathed. Cold air, real winter, open sky. It felt like stepping into a memory she never knew she had. Anna tilted her face upward, letting snowflakes land on her eyelashes. "It's so quiet," she murmured. "Like the whole world is sleeping." Clara nodded. "I didn't know snow could sound like this." A few younger children played nearby, scooping handfuls of powder and watching it fall from their mittens in sparkling trails. One boy giggled as a flake landed on his nose. Another stood perfectly still, as if listening to secrets the wind whispered only to him. The conductor and a pair of railway workers checked the wheels and connections beneath the train. Their tools clinketed softly, echoing across the silent plains. Lanterns swung gently from hooks on their belts, casting amber circles that warmed the snow. Clara wandered only a few steps from the train, careful to stay within the matron's watchful eye. She touched the wooden post of the water tower, feeling how cold and solid it was beneath her glove. From here she could see faint tracks leading off toward a cluster of distant pines half hidden in the drifting snow. "Do you think people live out there?" she asked Anna quietly. "Maybe," Anna said. "Maybe they're sitting by a fire right now. Maybe they're waiting for Christmas, too." Clara smiled faintly. The thought warmed her more than the train's coal stove. A gust of wind swept across the crossing, tugging lightly at their coats. Tiny crystals of snow swirled around them, bright as sparks in the lantern light. The matron called gently for the children to return to the train. Clara stepped back onto the metal stairs, taking one last look at the quiet, snow-filled world around them. Brimstone Crossing was a lonely place, but a peaceful one too. A reminder that even in winter's heart, stillness could feel like safety. As she settled into her seat again, wiping melting snowflakes from her sleeves, she felt a strange sense of calm settle inside her. The world was vast, yes, but it wasn't empty. It was full of places waiting to be discovered, full of quiet moments like this one. And the train, with its glowing lanterns and soft murmurs, was carrying her through all of it. By the time the train pulled away from Brimstone Crossing, the storm had begun its slow retreat across the plains. What had once been a curtain of swirling white gradually thinned into a gentle drift, and then into only the occasional flake floating lazily past the window. The children noticed it first in the shift of the light. The lanterns no longer needed to fight against the storm's darkness. The world outside began to glow in a softer, clearer way. Clara leaned close to the window, her breath forming a pale mist on the glass. "Look," she whispered. "It's clearing." Indeed, the sky was opening. Through the thinning veil of clouds, deep indigo began to peek through like a night sky brushing off its heavy winter blanket. The plains below shimmered under the first touch of moonlight, a silver sheen spreading gently over the snow. Anna pressed her face beside Clarara's. "I forgot how pretty night could be," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. The conductor passed through the aisle a moment later, his face warmed by the lantern glow. "Storms moving east," he said with a small, satisfied nod, "should be a calm night from here." The children relaxed, their shoulders softening, their breaths deepening. The storm had been a reminder of how fragile their journey could feel. Now, with the sky clearing, it was as though hope had returned on quiet feet. As the train rolled farther into the deepening night, the clouds drifted apart completely, revealing a stretch of sky so full of stars it looked like someone had shaken a handful of diamonds across a velvet cloth. The children gasped softly, one by one, as they noticed. Clarara pressed her palm gently against the cold glass. The stars felt impossibly close, bright, steady, scattered across the heavens, like distant lanterns guiding them west. "Do you think they're watching us?" a small voice asked from a few rows ahead, a little girl clutching a frayed doll to her chest. The matron smiled tenderly. "I think the stars watch everyone," she said. "But perhaps tonight they shine a little brighter for travelers." The rhythmic hum of the rails softened into a soothing lull, a perfect companion to the starry sky. Clarara's eyes drifted from star to star, tracing imaginary shapes between them. She found one cluster that reminded her of the paper star tucked in her bag. Another looked like a tiny lantern. Another like a home she had never seen. The moon, rising slow and pale, cast a silvery glow into the train car. It glinted off little faces, off metal cup rims, off the polished brass hooks along the walls. It felt like moonlight was gently brushing the children's cheeks, as though offering them comfort after the storm. Anna pulled her blanket up to her chin. "It's like the sky is starting fresh," she whispered, "like it wiped itself clean." Clarara nodded, "Like we are too." A few children began humming softly, their voices blending into something sweet and pure. The matron joined in, her low, steady voice weaving a quiet melody through the car. It was not a song Clarara recognized, but it felt like it belonged to travelers everywhere. Slow, gentle, filled with warmth, the train glided smoothly through the starless, leaving 2 glowing tracks behind it in the snow. Inside, the children drifted into a calm, dreamlike stillness, wrapped in blankets and soft breaths. Clarara felt her eyelids grow heavy, but she fought to keep them open, afraid she might miss a single star. But eventually the rocking train and the peaceful night won out. Her head rested lightly against the wooden seat, and she fell into a quiet, drifting half-sleep, carried by the hum of wheels, the glow of lanterns, and the soft shimmer of winter stars. It was a night she would remember forever, a night when the world felt vast, gentle and full of possibility. The train rolled deeper into the night, the world outside glowing in moonlit silver, while the children slept in soft, uneven clusters. Clarara drifted in and out of dreams, her thoughts slipping between memories and the gentle rhythm of the rails. Each sway of the carriage felt like being rocked by a careful hand, each faint whistle like a distant lully drifting across the plains. Sometime around midnight, Clarara stirred awake. The lanterns had been dimmed to soft amber embers, their glow barely touching the ceiling. The stove crackled quietly, radiating a faint heat that smelled of pine sap and coal. Most of the children were curled under blankets, breaths rising and falling in peaceful waves. Only one person was awake besides her. The matron sat near the center of the car, a book open on her lap, her silhouette bathed in the soft gold of the low lantern. She looked peaceful, eyes steady, posture relaxed, as though she had anchored herself there to keep watch over them all. Clara hesitated before slipping quietly from her seat, careful not to wake Anna. Her boots made only the faintest whisper as she approached. The matron looked up with a small, knowing smile. "Couldn't sleep, dear." Clara shook her head gently. "Not all the way." "Stormy nights can do that," the matron murmured, closing her book with a soft thump. Even after the storm has passed, Clara took a seat across from her, pulling her blanket around her shoulders. The warmth from the stove brushed against her skin, easing the chill she hadn't realized she still carried. The matron glanced around at the sleeping children. "Would you like a story? Something quiet?" Clara nodded. Her heart warmed at the thought. The matron reached into the pocket of her cloak and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. When she unfolded it, Clara saw a tiny wooden horse carved with delicate details, the curve of its mane, the arch of its neck, the gentle tilt of its head. It was old, the wood smoothed by many hands. "This," the matron whispered, turning it gently, "belonged to a boy I escorted on a train many years ago." Clara leaned closer, captivated. "He carved it himself," the matron continued. "Every mile of the journey, he held it. It was the only thing he had from his father, who had been a carpenter. He kept it with him through every stop, every uncertainty." "What happened to him?" Clara asked softly. The matron smiled, warm and distant. "He was chosen by a family in Kansas, a farming couple who wanted a son, and do you know what he did?" She traced her thumb over the horse's smooth back. "He left this with me, said he didn't need it anymore, said his new home would be enough." Clara felt her throat tighten, not with sadness, but with a quiet, gentle ache. "Why do you keep it?" she whispered. "To remember," the matron said, "that every child on these trains carries a whole world inside them. Hopes, fears, memories, and courage. More courage than most adults ever have." Outside, a soft wind brushed across the windows, making the frost shimmer like tiny stars resting on the glass. Clara felt the moment settle around her, warm, safe, wrapped in story and silence, and the patient hum of the train. "Will all of us find homes?" Clara asked, her voice barely audible. The matron reached out and placed a gentle hand over Clara's fingers. Her touch was warm, steady. "Homes come in many shapes," she said softly. "Some are found quickly, some take time, but every child finds their place in the world, Clara, one way or another." Sometimes her eyes shone kindly. "A home finds you." Clara let the words sink into her like warm tea on a cold night. She didn't know what waited for her at the next town, or the one after that. But sitting here under lantern light and moonlit frost, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Belief. Not in a perfect future, but in a possible one. The matron handed her the wooden horse to hold for a moment. Its tiny carved back fit perfectly in her palm, as though it had been waiting for her all along. After a few breaths, she handed it back. "Thank you," she whispered. The matron nodded, then opened her book again, humming a faint tune, soft, slow, almost like the turning of pages in the winter night. Clara returned to her seat and nestled beside Anna, the blanket warm and inviting. Her eyelids grew heavy again, but her heart felt a little lighter, a little braver. Outside, A sky full of stars watched over the train as it carried its sleeping travelers into the next quiet stretch of night. Clara woke to a pale glow filtering through the frosted windows, the kind of light that arrives slowly, stretching itself across the landscape with a gentle silvery touch. The train had quieted during the early hours, its rhythm softened to a lazy, steady pulse. She blinked sleep from her eyes and drew the blanket up around her shoulders, feeling the lingering warmth from the night before. Around her, the children were beginning to stir. Soft yawns, tiny murmurs, and the rustle of wool and cotton filled the air like the waking breath of a small forest. Anna sat up beside her, rubbing her eyes. "Morning already," Anna whispered, her voice still dipped in dreams. Clara nodded, glancing toward the window. A winter morning somewhere far from where we started. The world outside had transformed again, gone with a blinding flurries and swirling storm. Instead, the plains lay quiet and glassy beneath a thin veil of morning frost. Bare trees dotted the landscape, their branches reaching upward like ink strokes against the pale sky. Smoke rose from a distant farmhouse chimney, thin, gray, and curling into the cold air like a question. This was a new part of the country, one Clara had never seen. The horizon was wider than anything she'd known in the city. Even the silence had a different character, broader, deeper, almost sacred. The conductor appeared, brushing snow from his shoulders. "We're moving into the hinterlands," he announced softly, so as not to startle the still waking children. "Small towns ahead, a few stops today." Those words settled into Clarida's heart like the drop of a pebble into still water. Soft, subtle, but rippling with possibility. A few stops today, that meant families, that meant choices, that meant outcomes. Anna seemed to think the same. "Do you think today might be the day?" she asked quietly. Clara swallowed gently. "Maybe, or maybe soon." The matron came through the aisle with a basket of warm biscuits wrapped in cloth, steam rising faintly from each piece. She handed them out carefully, her smile soft and reassuring. Clara accepted one, feeling its comforting heat seep into her palms. The smell, buttery, slightly sweet, filled the car with a sense of home that many of the children had unfelt in a long, long time. As they ate, the landscape rolled by in slow, dreamy stretches. Frozen ponds glimmered under the new sun. Fences marked the edges of farmland sleeping beneath the snow. A lone horse grazed near a distant barn, its breath rising in pale clouds that lingered in the cold air. Clara let her gaze drift with the scenery, each moment unfolding like a page in an illustrated book. "Do you think we'll meet kind people?" Anna asked between small bites of her biscuit. Clara nodded thoughtfully. "I think there are kind people everywhere. We just haven't met all of them yet." The train hummed on, picking up just enough speed to carry them into deeper countryside. Clara noticed shapes appearing on the horizon, small clusters of buildings, perhaps a town waking from its winter rest. Inside the car, a quiet buzz of anticipation began to grow. Some children sat straighter. Others smoothed their hair or checked their shoes. Clara brushed away a bit of biscuit crumb from her coat, then straightened her collar. She wasn't sure if she would be chosen today, but she wanted to be ready. For a moment, she reached into her carpet bag and touched the folded paper star. It crackled softly under her fingertips. The small, simple comfort brought a calmness to her breathing. Whatever the day held, she told herself she would face it. The sun lifted a little higher, spilling pale gold across the snow. The train kept its calm pace, carrying 30 hopeful children toward the first town of the day, a place waiting quietly on the horizon, its chimneys smoking, its windows glowing faintly. A new chapter of their journey was about to begin. As the sun climbed gently above the horizon, the train curved past a cluster of leafless birch trees and revealed the first town of the day, Maple Hollow, a small settlement nestled quietly against the winter plains. Clara leaned forward in her seat, her breath soft against the window as she tried to take it all in. The town appeared peaceful, almost dreamlike. Snow coated the rooftops in soft white quilt. Thin trails of smoke drifted upward from chimneys, mingling with the morning air. A church steeple rose at the town center, its bell glowing faintly in the early light. Wooden fences lined the outskirts, forming gentle boundaries around small fields that slept under winter's touch. As the train slowed, Clara saw a few townspeople gathering along the platform. Men in heavy coats, women wrapped in wool shawls, and a handful of curious children bundled tightly against the cold. Their breaths drifted like small clouds as they waited, their faces a mixture of curiosity, hope, and uncertainty. Anna's fingers tightened around Clara's hand. "Do you think one of them might want us?" she whispered. Clara didn't answer right away. Her heart fluttered, not with fear exactly, but with the strange and tender anticipation that came with standing on the edge of possibility. She squeezed Anna's hand back, steady and warm. "Maybe," she murmured. "Let's just breathe for now." The train eased to a stop with a soft groan of metal and a releasing hiss of steam. A wash of colder air slipped through the cabin as the conductor opened the door, letting in the scent of pine, frost, and distant firewood. "Maple Hollow," he announced gently. "Short stop. Families waiting." The children grew very quiet. Some lifted their chins, trying to look confident and collected. Others lowered their gazes, overwhelmed by the moment. A few whispered prayers or held tiny trinkets for luck. Clara simply pulled her blanket a little tighter around her shoulders and tried to feel her heartbeat as something comforting rather than loud. The matron stepped out first, greeting the small crowd of townsfolk. Clara watched as the adults talked, soft voices mixing with the creak of snow under boots and the gentle hum of the train engine. She could see the warm expression on the matron's face, the hopeful looks exchanged by the waiting families. One woman, carrying a wicker basket covered with a red cloth, came closer to the group. She had kind eyes and rosy cheeks touched by the cold. She spoke with the matron in low, earnest tones, glancing occasionally at the train's windows. Anna leaned closer to Clara. "She looks kind," she whispered. Clara nodded. "She does." But Clara also knew this moment wasn't about who looked kind. It was about who was looking for someone specific. A boy to help on a farm. A girl to keep a lonely home warm. A pair of siblings who needed each other. A family's heart had to feel the right shape for the child standing before them. The children disembarked slowly, carefully, their boots pressing tiny patterns into the snow. Clara and Anna stepped onto the platform together, their feet touching solid ground with a gentle crunch. The cold air rushed around them, but it wasn't sharp. It was refreshing, almost sweet, filled with the scent of chimneys and winter mornings. Townspeople watched them with tender eyes. Some smiled shilly. Others held knitted gloves between their hands as if unsure what to do with them. A few children from Maple Hollow peered curiously from behind their parents' coats, their cheeks pink from the cold. Clara stood still for a moment, letting the winter air fill her lungs. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if today would bring change or simply be another page in a much longer journey, but she felt steady. She felt ready. The matron called a few names, guiding certain children forward. A small boy with dark curls took hesitant steps toward a tall man who smiled warmly at him. A pair of sisters were introduced to an older couple who looked as though their hearts widened with every word spoken. Clara and Anna stood quietly shoulder to shoulder waiting. Snowflakes drifted gently from the sky, soft and slow, as if time itself had chosen to move with care. Whether or not this was their moment didn't matter yet. What mattered was that they were here, alive, brave, and standing on the edge of something new. And Maple Hollow, with its warm chimneys and watchful eyes, seemed to breathe gently around them, as though wishing them well. The winter air settled around the platform, crisp and quiet, as Clara and Anna stood close together beneath the soft drift of snow. Maple Hollow felt gentle, almost shy, its wooden buildings huddled together as though sharing warmth, its chimneys releasing slow spirals of smoke into the pale morning sky. Clara felt the hush of the moment seep into her chest, calming and steadying her breath. The woman with the red cloth-covered basket stepped closer to the children. Up close, she seemed even kinder. Deep smile lines shaped her face, and her gloved hands were careful and graceful, as though she spent her days tending to things that mattered. Dough in a warm kitchen, the buttons on a child's coat, the delicate edges of something breakable. The matron greeted her warmly. "Mrs. Turner," she said, "thank you for coming." "I wouldn't miss it," the woman replied, her voice warm like fresh bread from an oven. She held the basket a little closer against the cold. "I brought a few things, thought the children might need something warm to settle their nerves." Clara watched as Mrs. Turner lifted the cloth, revealing small loaves of honey oat bread, still warm, their golden crusts shining softly in the morning light. The scent drifted through the frigid air, sweet, comforting, like a memory of holidays and hearths. Anna inhaled sharply. "That smells like home," she whispered. The matron guided the children into a gentle line, not for choosing, not yet, but simply to offer them a taste of something kind. Mrs. Turner moved down the row, handing each child a small slice of warm bread with such tenderness that it felt like a blessing rather than a gift. When she reached Clara and Anna, she paused. "Well now," she said with a soft smile, "you two look like you're watching the whole world with very brave eyes." Clara felt her cheeks warm despite the cold. She accepted her slice carefully, the warmth spreading into her palms. Anna did the same, her fingers trembling slightly. Mrs. Turner tilted her head thoughtfully. "What are your names, dears?" "Clara," she said quietly. "And I'm Anna," her friend added. Mrs. Turner's gaze softened even more. "Beautiful names." She hesitated, then reached into her basket again and pulled out 2 knitted scarves, one a soft blue, the other the color of fresh cream. The wool looked thick and warm, handmade with love. "These," Mrs. Turner said gently, "are 4 girls who look like they need a touch more warmth today." Clara blinked, surprised. "For us, if you'd like them," the woman said with a nod. "No matter where you go next, you should carry something made with care." Clara accepted the blue scarf, a lump rising in her throat. Anna took the cream-colored one, running her fingers over the soft stitches as though they might slip away if she touched them too quickly. Mrs. Turner stepped back, but not far. Her eyes lingered on the children. Not searching for perfection or checking sizes or comparing personalities, just watching quietly with a kind of warmth Clara didn't quite understand. "Are you looking for a child today?" the matron asked gently. Mrs. Turner smiled, though it was soft around the edges. "I'm considering," she admitted. "I've been lonely since my husband passed last spring. I thought maybe our home could use a little laughter again, a little hope." Clara's heart tightened. Not painfully, just enough to feel the softness of the moment. But Mrs. Turner was not yet choosing today. She looked at each child with care, but not with decision. She gave bread and scarves and warmth, but she wasn't ready to reach for a name, and that was all right. Not every stop was meant for choosing. Some stops were meant to remind them that kindness existed. Real human kindness that didn't need anything in return. After a few minutes, the conductor blew a soft note on his whistle, signaling that departure was near. The townsfolk said their gentle goodbyes. A few children were invited to stay in Maple Hollow, a little boy with quiet eyes, the pair of sisters who had giggled shilly at an older couple, but Clara and Anna remained together, untouched by the decisions of the day, still traveling, still waiting, still wrapped in hope. Mrs. Turner approached one last time. She placed a warm hand briefly on Clara's shoulder, then on Anna's. "You too," she whispered. "Carry light with you. I can see it. Wherever you're headed, you deserve a good home." Clara felt the words settle inside her chest, like a small ember glowing to life. As they stepped back onto the train, the blue scarf snug around her neck, Clara looked at the town one last time. Maple Hollow seemed to glow back at her, a gentle winter-bright reminder that the world held kindness in unexpected places. The train doors closed with a soft thud, and the whistle sang into the cold morning air. Another town waited ahead, another possibility, another turn in their winter journey. The train pulled away from Maple Hollow with a gentle shudder, its wheels settling back into the familiar rhythm that had become the children's traveling heartbeats. Clara watched the town drift slowly out of view. The red cloth on Mrs. Turner's basket, the faint glow of chimney smoke, the clusters of snow-dusted roofs shrinking until they were swallowed by the pale wintry horizon. She touched the blue scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. Its warmth held a softness that felt almost like a memory, or perhaps a promise. Beside her, Anna sat quietly, her cream-cold scarf nestled against her chin, her gaze lingering on the snow-covered tracks behind them. "Do you think she think of us?" Anna asked softly. "I think she already is," Clara replied. The train rattled gently onward, leaving Maple Hollow behind, but carrying the warmth of its kindness with them. Soon the landscape opened again, broad expanses of winter fields shimmering under the pale sun like sheets of glass. Frozen creeks wound through the land like thin silver threads, their edges lined with delicate frost. Here and there a lone horse stood near a fence, its breath puffing softly into the cold morning air. Inside the car, the children were quieter than before, some thoughtful, some hopeful, some sleepy from the warm bread, still settling in their bellies. The matron moved through the aisle with calm steps, checking blankets, tucking stray scarves, brushing crumbs from tiny coats. Clara rested her head lightly against the window, watching the world glide by. The gentle rocking of the train soothed her like the slow swaying of a cradle. For a while, she simply breathed in the warm scent of wool and coal, letting the rhythm settle her heart. Anna shifted beside her. "Do you think our stop will be soon?" Clara smiled faintly. "Our stop might be the next one, or the one after that, or even the last one." Anna nodded, though her eyes were full of quiet wondering. I just hope wherever it is that we'll be together. Clara felt a soft ache bloom in her chest. Me too. The matron approached their row, pausing with a gentle smile. How are you girls feeling? Warm, Anna said. Hopeful, Clara added. The matron's eyes softened. Good. That's exactly what the journey asks of you. She moved on, humming a tune under her breath. A soft wandering melody that wove itself through the car, calming restless minds and steadying small hearts. As the morning stretched into early afternoon, the sky began to lighten with a fragile brightness. The clouds parted in gentle wisps, letting sunlight spill across the snowy plains in long golden ribbons. The world brightened not suddenly but tenderly, as though the sun was placing a warm hand on the land. Children lifted their heads to the window, their faces softening in the glow. Even the youngest ones, still half asleep, blinked at the sudden beauty. Clara leaned closer to the glass. It feels like the day is opening wide, Anna murmured, like it's waiting. The train chugged on quietly and steadily, weaving its way between scattered farms and distant clusters of trees. Every so often, Clara spotted a little house with a porch or a small barn painted a fading red. Each one carried its own story, its own warmth, its own possibilities, and though she didn't know which town would be hers, she felt for the first time that the world was not as frighteningly large as it had once seemed. It was big, yes, but it was full of people, full of places, full of chances. The scarf around her neck held the faint scent of bread and winter air, a reminder of something gentle, something human. The tracks stretched endlessly ahead, two glowing lines carving a path through the snow. Clara breathed deeply and let her heart rest in the quiet certainty of motion. They were going somewhere, and wherever that was, it was waiting for them. The afternoon sun drifted lower in the sky, softening into a pale gold that washed gently over the snowy expanse. The train's hum remained steady, but something in the rhythm of the journey shifted. Subtle, almost imperceptible, like a thought forming at the edge of a dream. Clara sensed it before she understood it. A change not in speed but in intention. As though the train were preparing to meet something unexpected. The conductor appeared moments later, brushing frost from his sleeves. He paused near the center of the car, his voice low and calm. "We'll be making a brief, unscheduled stop," he said. "Small place, not on the Timets." The children lifted their heads, murmuring quietly. An unscheduled stop felt like a secret. Something whispered between the tracks and the winter wind. Clara looked to Anna, whose eyes had widened with a mix of curiosity and wonder. "What do you think it is?" Anna asked. Clara shook her head slowly, but the flutter in her heart felt strangely hopeful. Outside, the landscape shifted again. The train rolled through a small copse of trees, bare branches arching overhead like the ribs of a cathedral, before emerging into a tiny clearing cradled by snowdrifts. There nestled among the white sat a cluster of just 3 buildings, a narrow general store with a sagging porch, a weather-beaten post office no larger than a shed, and a little cabin with smoke curling gently from its chimney. No sign, no name, just a quiet place held tenderly by the winter. The train slowed with a soft groan, steam billowing outward in swirling clouds. As it eased to a stop, Clara felt as though they had arrived at a crossroads between 2 worlds, the world of their past and the world that waited patiently ahead. The matron rose from her seat. "Children," she said softly, "stay together. This is only a short pause." Her voice carried a gentleness that reassured them all. A lone figure stepped from the cabin. A man wrapped in a wool coat patched at the seams, a knitted cap pulled low over his ears. His walk was steady, though his shoulders held a quiet loneliness like someone who had lived through too many winters alone. He approached the train with slow, deliberate steps. Anna whispered, "Do you think he's here for a child?" Clara watched closely. Something about the man's eyes struck her, not searching, not expectant, but deeply tired. He stopped at the edge of the platform and removed his cap, revealing weathered hair dusted with snow. The conductor greeted him with a nod. "Afternoon, Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale." The man's voice was deep, softened by age and solitude. "Saw the smoke from your engine," he said. "Wasn't expecting a train today. Storm last night slowed us some," the conductor explained. "We're checking the line and giving the children a little rest." Mr. Hale glanced toward the windows, where small faces watched him with cautious curiosity. His gaze lingered, not with longing, but with something quieter. Perhaps remembrance, perhaps regret. Clara's heart tugged. She couldn't explain it, but she felt the pull of the moment as surely as she felt the sway of the train. The matron stepped out to speak with him. A few words drifted through the cold air, soft, respectful, exchanged between two people who knew loss too well. Mr. Hale reached into his coat and pulled out a small burlap sack. "For the children," he said simply. "What is it?" the matron asked gently. He hesitated. "Apples from last harvest, only a few left," thought he cleared his throat. Thought they might taste good to young mouths. The matron accepted the sack with both hands. "Thank you," she said warmly. "They will." Mr. Hale nodded once. "Safe travels then." But just as he turned to leave, he paused. His eyes shifted toward the train again, toward the rows of children bundled inside. His posture softened, shoulders lowering ever so slightly, as though something in him cracked open. Then he walked slowly back to his cabin, boots crunching through the snow. The stop lasted only a few minutes. No children were chosen here. No families waited. No decisions were made. Yet the moment felt full, quiet, meaningful, as though the train had paused, not just for maintenance or breath, but to cross paths with a soul who carried his own private winter. The matron returned with the burlap sack and shared the apples, small, slightly wrinkled, but still sweet. Clara bit into hers, the crisp flesh filling her mouth with a taste of autumn warmth. Anna smiled as she chewed, the juice glistening on her mitten. Inside the train, a soft peace settled over them. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snowy clearing. As the train pulled away, Clara looked back through the window and saw Mr. Hale standing on his porch. He watched them go, a hand raised in a quiet farewell, the smoke from his chimney rising like a slow sigh into the winter sky. And Clara understood, in a way she didn't have words for, that kindness came in many forms. Sometimes warm bread, sometimes knitted scarves, and sometimes a simple apple offered by a man who had little left but a generous heart. The train gathered speed, carrying them onward into the long stretch of afternoon. The train rolled on through the waning afternoon, carving two silver lines through the snow-laden plains. The trees grew taller now, thicker too, clusters of pines standing like quiet guardians along the tracks. Their branches sagged under winter's weight, showering the passing train with soft flurries whenever the wind stirred them. Inside the car, the children rested in a warm and drowsy calm. Some napped with heads nestled against bundled coats. Others whispered gently to their seatmates, sharing tiny hopes and small stories that softened the long journey into something more bearable. Clara, wrapped in her blue scarf, stared out at the world beyond the window. The afternoon sun diffused into a pale glow across the land, coloring everything in a tender shade of gold. The train's hum filled her with a steady comfort, as though the rails were speaking in quiet, soothing rhythms meant only for her and the children who traveled beside her. Anna shifted beside her. "Do you think the next town will be bigger?" "Maybe," Clara said softly. "Or maybe just different." But as the conductor's whistle gave a low, thoughtful note, the train began to slow once more. This time, approaching a small cluster of buildings nestled against a frozen river that curved like a pale ribbon through the landscape. A wooden sign came into view, its letters faded by wind and time, Riverbend. The place looked simple, quiet, almost shy in its winter stillness. A few fishermen's shacks lined the riverbank, their windows glowing faintly from oil lamps inside. A narrow bridge arched over the frozen waters, its railings dusted in snow, while smoke curled from a pair of chimneys near the center of the little community. A handful of townspeople stood waiting on the platform, bundled tightly against the cold, their cheeks pink from the wind coming off the frozen river. Some held lanterns, their warm glow flickering against the pale afternoon light. "Riverbend," the matron said gently as she stood and straightened her cloak. "A small but caring place. Let us see what today brings." Clara felt a familiar flutter in her chest, the mingling of hope and fear that seemed to accompany every stop. The scarf around her shoulders felt warm, grounding. She touched it lightly, reminding herself that kindness existed in many forms, even if she wasn't chosen today. The children lined up quietly, their breaths drifting in soft clouds as the conductor opened the door. They stepped out onto the wooden platform, the river's icy scent mingling with the crisp air. The frozen water sparkled under the winter sun, catching glimmers of gold and blue. A tall woman stepped forward first, her hands clasped in front of her wool coat. She had silver streaks in her hair and gentle eyes that studied the children with a softness that eased their shoulders. "Welcome," she said kindly. "We're glad to have you stop here today." Another man, shorter and rounder, nodded with a smile. "A few of us wanted to meet the travelers," he explained. "See if we might be of help." Clara exchanged a glance with Anna, quiet, hopeful, breath held. The matron guided the children into a small semicircle on the platform. The townspeople approached gently, introducing themselves, asking names, offering smiles that warmed the cold air. But unlike Maple Hollow, these townsfolk seemed less certain. Curious, but undecided, perhaps unsure of what they truly sought. One couple asked after a child who might be strong enough to help on their small farm. A boy of about 9 was chosen, his face a blend of relief and fear as the matron guided him to his new caretakers. Another elderly man, whose hands trembled slightly in the cold, took interest in a quiet girl who loved to sew. He asked her what she could make, and her shy answer brought a tear to the corner of his eye. Clara watched it all unfold like a gentle dream. Each child who stepped forward did so with courage, their small hands gripping the moment as best they could. And though Clara's name wasn't called, she felt no sting, not today. The kindness on the faces around her, the calm river at her side, the way the winter light touched everything with gold. None of it felt heavy. Anna nudged her gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "Our turn will come." Clara nodded, her breath forming a tiny cloud that drifted upward, dissolving into the icy air. After a short while, The matron gathered the remaining children. "Time to board," she said softly. "Riversbend has given us a warm welcome." Clara took one last look at the frozen river. The sunlight shimmered across its surface like a path made of light and hope. The image filled her with a quiet peace. As she stepped back onto the train, she felt a gentle certainty settle inside her heart. Each stop was a step forward. Each moment carried its own meaning, and somewhere ahead, whether near or far, a home waited, a home shaped just right for her. The train moved on from Riverbend with a soft rumble, its wheels clicking in a calm, steady rhythm that seemed to lull the entire car into a thoughtful quiet. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting longer shadows across the snow-covered world, turning the plains into a canvas of blues and golds. Inside, the children settled once more into their seats, warmed by the gentle glow of lanterns and the comforting hum of the rails. Clara rested her chin lightly against her scarf, feeling its softness against her cheek. Around her, most of the children were lost in their own thoughts, little minds wandering through memories, hopes, new uncertainties. "Do you think," Anna whispered, "that the next place might be the one?" Clara breathed softly. "Maybe, but if it isn't, that's all right too." Anna nodded, accepting the quiet truth in those words. Outside the window, the landscape slowly changed again. The train curved around a low hillside, moving into a region where the land dipped gently toward a broad valley. In the distance, Clara noticed something catching the fading light. A narrow iron bridge stretching over a river that cut through the snowy banks like a dark thread. Its frame rose in graceful arches, the metal beams dusted in frost that glittered like tiny stars. The conductor stepped into the aisle, adjusting his gloves. "We're approaching Frost Bridge," he said softly. "A crossing point, not a town, but it's something special to see." Clara pressed closer to the window. As the train neared the bridge, she could see the river beneath it, wide, half-frozen. The surface a mosaic of floating ice sheets drifting like slow-moving puzzle pieces. The sound of water echoed faintly, carrying up through the valley, soft and distant, yet hauntingly beautiful. The train began its steady journey onto the bridge. For a moment it felt as though they were suspended in the air, rolling across a narrow path above a river that whispered old winter secrets. The metal beams around them hummed gently with the train's weight, creating a low melodic vibration that filled the car like a quiet song. Anna's eyes widened. "It feels like we're floating," Clara nodded, "like we're crossing into another world." The river below shimmered faintly, reflecting the last colors of the sunset: lavender, rose, gold. The fading light danced across the ice, casting shifting patterns upward through the beams. The steady hum of the train mingled with the distant rush of water, creating a harmony so soft and soothing that Clara felt her breath fall naturally into its rhythm. "Listen," one of the younger boys murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "It sounds like the river is talking," and in a way it did. The wind moved through the metal arches with a gentle hollow tone, an echo that rose and fell like a sigh. Each gust created a soft whistling that drifted through the car, brushing over the children like a lullaby woven from winter air and old wandering waters. The matron closed her eyes briefly as though savoring the sound. "This bridge," she said quietly, "was built many years ago. Legend says travelers crossing it can hear echoes of their own hopes. It's just a story, of course." She smiled faintly, "but it feels true somehow." Clara listened carefully, letting the echoes settle into her. She imagined her hopes drifting into the wind, soft, fragile things carried gently along the arches. She wondered what the river beneath them heard, what it whispered back. As the train reached the center of the bridge, the sky shifted again. The last sliver of sunlight dipped behind the hills, casting the world in a deepening twilight blue. Lantern light inside the car shimmered against the windows, blending with the faint glow of the early stars beginning to scatter across the sky. Anna rested her head lightly on Clara's shoulder. "What do you hope for?" she whispered. Clara took a breath, feeling the hum of the bridge beneath her feet. "A place that feels safe," she murmured. "A place where someone says my name softly, like it means something." Anna smiled gently. "I hope for that too." The train continued across the bridge, the echoes fading gradually into the soft quiet of evening. When they finally reached the far end, the wheels met solid ground with a gentle thud, like a heartbeat settling back into its steady rhythm. Behind them, Frostbridge stood tall and silent against the twilight, holding its quiet music in its arches. Ahead of them, the track wound deeper into the night, toward towns unknown, toward possibilities not yet discovered. Clara felt something settle inside her chest. Not certainty, not fear, but a deep, patient hope, like the echo of the bridge lingering long after the sound had faded. Night deepened as the train continued westward, the sky turning into a velvety expanse of deep indigo scattered with faint winter stars. A pale moon rose slowly from behind a distant ridge, brushing the snow-covered fields with soft silver light. The temperature dropped, and frost formed delicate crystals along the edges of the windows, tiny feathers of ice that blossomed silently across the glass. Inside the car, the cold stove glowed brighter, filling the space with a gentle, pulsing warmth. The children sank deeper into their blankets, some drifting into soft dreams, others watching the quiet world outside with sleepy eyes. Clara felt suspended between waking and dreaming, her mind still lingering on the echoes of the frost bridge. But as the land opened ahead of them, something else appeared along the tracks. A row of lanterns spaced evenly along the snowy ground, their golden flames flickering in the cold night. Anna noticed them at the same moment. "What are those?" she whispered. Clara leaned closer to the window, breath fogging the glass. "They look like little stars on the ground." The lanterns cast warm halos on the snow, glowing like tiny hearths guiding the train forward. Their light danced softly across the white drifts, creating pathways of gold that stretched into the shadows at the edge of the forest. The conductor stepped into the car, his voice low to avoid waking the younger children. "We're entering Lantern Path," he said, a stretch of track maintained by a nearby community. They place lanterns out each winter night to guide trains safely along the bends. Lantern Path. The name alone felt like a story. As the train approached the first lantern, Clara felt a hush fall over the entire car. The warm glow spilled across the windows, illuminating the children's faces with a tender amber light. Outside, the lantern flames flickered gently in the wind, but each remained steady, kept alive by careful hands that tended them daily. Anna whispered, "It's beautiful, like someone set out lights just for us." Clara nodded. Maybe they did. The train slowed slightly as though taking its time to pass through this luminous corridor. Lantern after lantern glowed to life beside them, hundreds maybe, stretching farther than Clara's eyes could follow. The matron stood quietly near the aisle, her expression softened by the warm light. "There are stories," she said gently, that long ago families would place lanterns outside their homes during winter nights, hoping lost travelers might see them and find safety. Lantern Path is a tradition born from that kindness. Clara imagined it. Villagers walking through the snow at dusk, placing lanterns carefully along the tracks, their breaths rising in soft puffs as they shielded each flame from the wind. She pictured gloved hands adjusting wicks, checking oil, lighting tiny sparks of warmth against the vast cold. What a thing, she thought, to light the way for strangers you may never meet. The train glided onward, lanterns reflecting in Clara's eyes like golden constellations. Some flickered softly, others stood firm, but each one added its own quiet glow to the night. The snow caught every bit of light, shimmering faintly like powdered silver. "Do you think," Anna whispered, "that people in those houses know we're here?" "The children are traveling through the cold." Clara smiled gently. "I think that's exactly why they light the lanterns." The thought warmed her deeply, spreading through her chest like a soft flame. She felt the memory of Mrs. Turner's kind eyes, Mr. Hale's shy offering of apples, the bridge's whispered echoes, now lanterns in the snow. All along this journey, gentle hands and watchful hearts seemed to brush lightly against their path. People who might never know their names, yet wished them well, all the same. As the train reached the heart of Lantern Path, Clara leaned her forehead against the cool glass, feeling the warmth of the lantern's glow through her more than around her. For a moment she closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she felt steadier, braver. Somewhere ahead her place waited. A home, a name spoken softly, a hearth where she could rest her scarf, her memories, her hope. But for now the lanterns lit the way, gentle flames guiding her through the night, and she let their glow carry her forward. The lantern-lit tracks eventually opened into a broader valley, where the moon shone brighter, and the snow lay smooth and untouched, except for the train's twin silver pathways. Clara watched the landscape shift again, subtle at first, then more distinctly. The air outside the window grew hazier, not with snow, but with smoke. Thin ribbon-like trails drifting upward from chimneys hidden among the trees. Anna lifted her head, curiosity stirring her sleepy eyes. "Are we near another town?" Clara nodded slowly, though she wasn't entirely sure. The scent drifting through the cracks of the window frame, faint but unmistakable, smelled of pine wood burning, rich and comforting. The fragrance that clung to small winter villages tucked deep between forests. The conductor stepped softly into the aisle, adjusting his cap as he surveyed the children. "Next stop is Pinebrook," he said gently. "Small place, but the people there are kind and close-knit." The name fit the moment perfectly. Outside, the trees grew taller and thicker, evergreens laced with snow, their branches heavy and sparkling under the moonlight. The smoke rising between them looked like slow ghostly fingers weaving through the quiet forest. The train slowed, wheels hissing softly as they met the cold rails. Lantern light inside the car flickered, casting warm reflections across the frosted windows. As Pinebrook came into view, Clara felt something stir inside her, a mixture of wonder and a quiet, patient hope. The town nestled in a gentle dip between hills. Log cabins and wooden cottages stood side by side, each one trimmed in a dusting of snow. Smoke curled from every chimney, giving the whole place a feeling of warmth, like a single glowing hearth spread across many homes. The platform was short and modest, lined with only a few lamps that cast a honey gold color on the boards. A handful of townspeople waited, bundled tightly in thick wool coats and furland hats. Their breaths drifted in little clouds. Their eyes, though cautious, held the soft glow of curiosity and kindness. Clara and Anna stepped out with the rest of the children, their boots making soft, crunching sounds on the snow-covered planks. The air was colder here, sharper, but somehow more welcoming. The scent of pine smoke grew stronger, mixing gently with the crisp winter breeze. A man in a heavy coat stepped forward. He had broad shoulders, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes that softened when they fell upon the children. "Good evening," he said with a nod. "Welcome to Pinebrook." Beside him stood a woman with deep brown hair tucked beneath a wool hood. She held a lantern close to her chest, the glow reflecting off her thoughtful expression. The matron introduced the group, her tone gentle and steady. The townspeople listened quietly, each face carrying its own story, some hopeful, some hesitant, all touched by the warm glow of the lantern she carried. A few children were called forward. A shy boy with a handcrafted whistle was approached by a couple who smiled when he showed them the tune he could play. A small girl with bright red mittens caught the attention of an older couple who had been looking for someone young enough to grow up at the rhythm of their quiet forest home. A pair of bros, inseparable and solemn, were invited to meet a family whose own children had moved away to distant cities. Clara watched each moment with a tender ache, soft, steady, beautiful. Each child stepping forward glowed with a little more courage than before, but no one approached her, not yet, and strangely she didn't feel the sting of it. Not in Pinebrook. This town wrapped in pine smoke and gentle moonlight felt like a place where waiting wasn't frightening. It was just another quiet chapter, another lantern along the path. Anna squeezed Clara's hand. "It feels calm here," she whispered. Clara nodded, like the town is breathing softly. When the last family stepped back, the matron looked over the remaining children with warm eyes. "All right," she said gently. "Time to board." Clara turned one last time, toward Pinebrook. The cabins glowed warmly in the night, each one like a tiny star resting on the earth. The pine smoke curled through the air like a lullaby rising from the hearths of 100 peaceful homes. As the train doors closed behind her, and the whistles sang softly through the valley, Clara felt her heart settle in a way she hadn't expected. Some towns were not meant to be endings. Some towns were meant to strengthen the journey, to remind travelers that the world, even in its smallest corners, could hold warmth waiting in the quiet. The train pulled away, its wheels singing gently along the rails, as Pinebrook faded into the snowy night, its lanterns glowing long after the town disappeared from sight. Night settled deeper around the Orphan train as it moved steadily west, the world outside dimming into a soft blue-black glow. The moonlight shimmered across snowy fields, casting long silver ribbons across the land. Inside the car, the children rested in a warm hush, lanterns glowing softly above their heads. Clara leaned back in her seat, the rhythmic sway of the train comforting her tired limbs. Anna sat beside her, eyes half-lidded, drifting in and out of thought. The warmth from the stove pulled gently through the aisle, mixing with the faint scent of wool, coal, and pine smoke, still lingering from Pinebrook. For a while, everything was quiet, peaceful, like a lullaby. Then the conductor entered, carrying something small, wrapped in an old handkerchief. His boots tapped lightly on the wooden floor as he approached the children near the center of the aisle. "Evenings like this," he said softly, "used to bring out a bit of music on these rails." He knelt beside a row of seats and unwrapped the object in his hands. It was a tin harmonica, worn and slightly dented, its metal dulled by years of travel. But even in the dim lantern light, something about it glimmered like a story waiting to be told. Anna whispered, "A harmonica." Clara leaned forward. "Do you play, sir?" The conductor smiled, lines forming gently around his eyes. "Not so much anymore, but this little thing here has heard more miles of track than most folks ever will." He ran his thumb along its surface. "Used to belong to a boy who traveled with us. Oh, must be 15 winters ago now. Played it every night of the journey." The children who were still awake turned their heads, their curiosity blooming like tiny sparks in the warm stillness. "What happened to him?" a small girl asked. The conductor paused, his smile softening into something deeper. "He found a home at the very last stop, a kind family. He left this behind in my coat pocket. Never said why. I always thought maybe he wanted the music to stay with the train." He turned the harmonica thoughtfully in his hands. "And tonight, well, the rails feel quiet." He looked toward Clara and Anna, maybe too quiet. He lifted the harmonica to his lips and blew a gentle note, soft, airy, trembling slightly in the warm lantern glow. It drifted through the car like a feather on the night wind. Another note followed, then another, forming a simple melody, slow and tender, the kind that feels like the beginning of a memory. The music wove itself around the children, gliding through the space like a soft whisper. It echoed faintly off the wooden walls, mingled with the low purr of the train wheels, and filled the air with something precious, something human. Clara felt her eyes sting gently, not from sadness, but from the sheer tenderness of the moment. The melody reminded her of the lullaby her mother used to hum when she was very small, before everything changed, before the world grew uncertain. She hadn't thought of that melody in years. Yet tonight, the harmonica brought it back in tiny fragments, like glowing embers stirring beneath ash. Anna leaned her head against Clara's shoulder, eyes closed. "It feels warm," she whispered. Clara nodded, like the music is holding us. The conductor played slowly, carefully, letting each note settle before moving to the next. The song itself wasn't perfect. The harmonica wheezed slightly, and a few notes wandered, but it didn't matter. Imperfections made the melody warmer, more real, like something carved from the stories of countless children who had traveled these rails before. When he finished, the car was utterly still. Even the wind outside seemed to pause as though listening. Clara whispered, "It was beautiful." The conductor smiled and rapped the harmonica again, folding the cloth with gentle hands. "Music travels far," he said. "Farther than trains, even sometimes a song can carry a child where words can't." He stood and tucked the harmonica into the inner pocket of his coat. "I think tonight needed that," he added softly. The matron nodded from her seat near the stove. It did indeed. As the conductor left the car, Clara felt the echo of the melody linger in her chest. Quiet, steady, glowing like a lantern held close to the heart. The train continued its journey westward, wheels humming, lanterns flickering gently. But now the night felt different, warmer, filled with a soft music that lived through memory, through breath, through hope. And Clara held that warmth with her, letting it settle deep within, guiding her like the lanterns that had lit the snow. The train glided deeper into the night, its lantern-lit windows moving like tiny stars across the vast winter plains. Clara felt the remnants of the harmonica's melody lingering inside her, soft, warm, glowing quietly in her chest. The hum of the rails beneath them seemed to echo that gentle tune, creating a harmony so subtle, so soothing it felt like a cradle rocking the children towards sleep. Outside, the land began to shift once more. The wide plains narrowed, giving way to a valley lined with towering pines. Their dark silhouettes rose like tall guardians against the midnight sky, branches heavy with cascading layers of snow. Moonlight filtered through in pale blue shafts, creating long, quiet shadows that stretched across the forest floor. Anna pressed her face closer to the window. "It looks like a forest from a fairy tale," she whispered. Clara nodded, her breath fogging the glass. "A quiet one, like it's holding its breath." And indeed, the valley felt still, a deep, reverent stillness that wrapped around the train like a soft, snowy blanket. Even the wind seemed to pause here, brushing only the uppermost branches with a gentle sigh. The conductor stepped into the aisle again, his voice low, respectful. "We're passing through silent pines," he said. "The valley is so thick with trees that the snow doesn't fall the same here. It hushes every sound. Train wheels, wind, even footsteps disappear under the pine boughs. Silent Pines." The name alone made Clarahar's heart drift. As the train rolled deeper into the valley, the children instinctively quieted as though sensing the sacred hush outside. Lantern light glowed softly against their cheeks, casting warm ripples across sleepy faces. Clara watched the pines sway gently, barely moving, their shadows like long fingers resting across the snow. The moon hung high above, its pale glow turning the frosted needles into tiny crystals that glimmered with each subtle shift of the wind. "It feels like the world is sleeping," Anna murmured. "Or dreaming," Clara whispered back. The matron moved gracefully through the aisle, her footsteps barely audible. She paused at the windows, looking out with soft familiarity. "When I was a girl," she said quietly, "my mother told me Silent Pines was a place where lost things find their way again." Clara's pulse fluttered. "Lost things," she echoed. The matron nodded. "Memories, hopes, even little pieces of courage that slipped away in fearful moments." Her gaze softened. "Some say the forest gathers them gently, keeps them safe, and returns them when travelers pass through." Clara felt a warmth bloom inside her, gentle, unexpected. She wondered just for a moment if something she'd lost long ago might be waiting for her among the towering trees. The train continued on, hardly making a sound, as though gliding across the valley on a cushion of soft breath and snow. The only noise was the faint murmur of the rails. Gentler now, softer, like a lullaby wrapped in the hush of winter. Across from Clara, a younger boy sat, with his eyes wide, staring at the forest. "Do you think the trees are listening?" he whispered. Clara smiled faintly. "Maybe they're keeping watch." Anna rested her head on Clara's shoulder again, breathing softly, the rhythm steady and comforting. Her scarf smelled faintly of fresh wool and pine from the earlier stops. Clara let her own head tilt slightly, the closeness warm and familiar. Silent Pines felt like a place where the world stopped rushing, where time slowed, softened, exhaled. As the train emerged from the hush of silent pines, the world seemed to breathe again. The wind picked up slightly, brushing the windows with soft whispers, and the stars overhead brightened against the deep winter sky. Clara blinked slowly, adjusting to the change. The forest's dreamlike stillness faded behind them, leaving a lingering calm in her chest. The plains opened once more, wide, snow-covered, glowing faintly under the moon's gentle light. The rails stretched ahead like two long silver threads woven through a quiet world. Anna stirred beside her and lifted her head. Did we really just pass through a forest where lost things come back? She murmured, half believing, half dreaming. Clara smiled, pulling her blanket around her shoulders. Maybe I feel like something returned. Even if I don't know what it is yet. Anna nodded sleepily. Me too. The train rounded a gentle curve and suddenly a soft glow appeared in the distance, a warm golden light flickering atop a hill. It shone steady and bright, cutting through the cold night like a beacon. Clara leaned closer to the window. "What's that?" she whispered. The conductor passing through the aisle paused and followed her gaze. His expression softened. "That," he said quietly, "is Hearthlike Cabin." The name alone warmed Clara's imagination. "It's a signal house," he continued. "A place where a caretaker keeps watch through long nights. Makes sure the tracks stay clear, especially in winter storms. The lantern in that window has been burning for years," Anna murmured. "Someone stays awake all night just for travelers like us." "For anyone who might be passing through," the conductor replied. "Some good people believe no journey should go unwatched." Clara let her eyes rest on the small glowing window as the train drew closer. Hearthlight Cabin stood alone on the snowy hill, simple, humble, but warm. Its roof was capped in thick layers of snow, and smoke curled from its chimney in slow spirals. The golden lantern in the window glowed steadily, a single point of light defying the vast darkness around it. As they passed the cabin, the figure of a man appeared in the window, silhouetted, holding a mug between both hands. He didn't wave or signal. He simply stood there, watching the train roll by, as though offering silent company in the night. The children leaned toward the window, drawn toward the warm flicker. Even the sleepiest among them opened their eyes, comforted by the small beacon burning just for them. Clara felt something inside her soften. "He looks lonely," she whispered. "Maybe," Anna said. "But maybe he's not sad. Maybe he's steady." Clara nodded. There was something quietly brave about the man in the window, keeping his lantern lit every night, watching the snow drift across the tracks, waiting for travelers who might never know his name. The matron, sitting near the stove, spoke gently. "Hearthlight Cabin has stood there for longer than I've been riding these rails. Through storms, through long winters, through holidays, when the world feels far away," she smiled softly. "Some journeys are easier when you know someone is watching over the path." The train rolled past the cabin, its lantern glow fading slowly behind them, flickering warmly until it finally disappeared into the snowy distance. Clara felt the warmth of it linger, as though the light had brushed her heart on its way by. Soon the rhythm of the train became the only sound again, steady, soothing, carrying them forward into the open night. The stars shimmered like tiny crystals overhead, and the moon cast its soft glow across the world. Clara wrapped her scarf closer and closed her eyes, imagining the cabin lights still burning behind them. Steady, unwavering, a promise in the dark. Somewhere ahead, new towns awaited, new possibilities, new faces and choices and hopes. But for now, she carried the hearthlight with her, a small, quiet flame to guide her through whatever came next. The night deepened into a calm, velvety darkness as the train continued its westward trek, humming softly against the quiet world outside. The faint warmth of hearth-like cabins still lingered in Clarara's mind, as though that single lantern flame had settled gently inside her chest. She felt steadier, quieter, almost as if her heart had found a rhythm that matched the rails beneath her. Outside, the landscape had changed again. The pines had thinned, giving way to an open stretch of wide sleeping fields, blanketed in snow that shimmered under the moonlight. The fields stretched so far into the distance that Clarara felt as though the world had unfolded just for their journey. A few small barns dotted the horizon, their roofs heavily layered in white. The shapes of slumbering haystacks rose like soft hills, rounded and smooth beneath the snow. Fences stood half-buried, forming gentle lines across the land, barely visible, but still holding the memory of warmer seasons. A hush covered everything. The kind of hush found only in deep winter nights when the world seems caught between one breath and the next. Anna curled closer under her blanket. "It's so still," she whispered, "like the fields are dreaming." Clarara nodded, letting her fingertips rest lightly on the cold window. "Maybe they are. Everything feels softer out there." The snow began to fall again, not fiercely like the earlier storm, but gently, as if lowered from the sky in slow, drifting handfuls. Each flake was delicate, glimmering as it passed through the moonlight before settling on the ground in a soft, quiet kiss. Inside the train, the children murmured sleepily, lulled by the soothing patter of snow against the roof. The coal stove glowed a comforting deep orange, warming the chilly corners. A faint scent of pine resin drifted from the firewood used earlier in the journey, mixing with the crisp fragrance of winter air, seeping through small gaps in the window frames. The matron moved slowly between the rows, adjusting blankets, smoothing a child's hair here and there, her movements tender and unhurried. When she reached Clarara and Anna, she paused with a gentle smile. "Look outside, girls," she murmured softly. "Nights like this remind us that even the world grows quiet sometimes." Clarara watched the slow dance of snowflakes over the fields. "It feels peaceful," she said. The matron nodded. "Peace comes in moments, small ones, like this." As she walked on, Clarara felt Anna lean gently against her shoulder. For a moment, the train car felt like a floating cradle, rocked by the tracks, warmed by lantern light, surrounded by a world softly wrapped in snow. Their little voices blended into the night, turning the train into a lullaby, moving across the silent fields. Clarara closed her eyes briefly, letting the warmth of the moment wash over her. The train passed over it smoothly, wheels clicking gently against the planks. Beneath the bridge, the water lay silent and still, covered by a thin layer of ice that caught the moonlight like a shard of glass. Clarara felt a quiet wonder rise in her. Every mile of this journey felt like a page unfolding in a story she had never known she was brave enough to live. Anna whispered, "Do you think we'll meet the right family soon?" Clarara breathed deeply, watching the snow fall in peaceful spirals. "Yes," she whispered back. "I don't know where, but I think we're getting closer." Ahead the sleeping fields lay open and endless. the snow drifting softly across them like a blanket pulled tenderly over the world, and the train carried their fragile hopes steadily onward. Two children wrapped in warmth, listening to the hush of winter, waiting for the next gentle turn in their story. The snowfall deepened into a soft, shimmering veil. As the night stretched on, Clara felt the gentle sway of the train steady her breathing, each motion rocking her deeper into a calm she hadn't known for years. The world outside remained wrapped in white, the moonlight catching on every snowy curve and shadow, turning the plains into a silver dreamscape. Then gently, almost chilly, a cluster of lights appeared in the distance, not lanterns this time, and not the single steady glow of a watchkeeper's cabin. These lights twinkled in small clusters, warm and golden, like fireflies resting on the snow. Anna straightened slightly. Another town. Clara nodded, captivated. I think so. As the train drew closer, the shape of a small village nestled beneath a long winter ridge slowly revealed itself. The ridge rose gently behind the homes, protecting the village like a great sleeping guardian, its rocky edges softened by thick layers of snow. Warm smoke rose from each chimney, drifting upward in smooth ribbons before being carried off by the night breeze. The roofs were steep to keep the snow from collecting too heavily, and many windows glowed with the soft golden light of oil lamps or low-burning firewood. The village felt almost secret, tucked away from the rest of the world, quiet and safe. The conductor stepped forward, his voice low. We're approaching Winter Ridge Village, he said. A small place, but they've housed many of our travelers over the years. A spark flickered in Clara's chest. She didn't dare name it hope, not yet, but something like it curled warmly beneath her ribs. The train slowed with a gentle hiss of steam, its wheels gliding across the snow-dusted tracks until it eased onto a modest wooden platform. The village's air carried a scent different from the previous stops, a blend of pine smoke, fresh bread, and something sweet and spiced, perhaps cinnamon, drifting from a late-night kitchen. The matron stood and smiled gently at the children. You may step down, stay close. Clara and Anna bundled their scarves snugly and stepped onto the platform, their boots meeting the snow with a satisfying crunch. The cold air kissed Clara's cheeks, painting them pink. A small group of villagers waited. 4 adults bundled tightly, lanterns held in gloved hands. Beside them, 2 older children stood chilly, their boots dusted with fresh snow. A woman stepped forward first. She wore a long wool coat and soft knit mittens. Something warm shone in her eyes as she looked at the children, her voice carrying a gentle tremble. Welcome, she said. We're glad you've come this far in this weather. Next to her, a tall man nodded in agreement. His shoulders were broad and his coat heavy, but his smile was soft. We don't get many visitors in winter. It's good to see young faces again. Clara felt Anna squeeze her hand gently. The villagers moved closer, but not hurriedly. Their steps were slow and respectful, as though they understood how much courage it took for the children to stand before strangers. The first woman knelt to speak with a pair of younger boys, offering them small ginger cookies she'd wrapped in cloth. Their eyes lit up instantly. A quiet man with spectacles spoke to a girl who liked reading, asking who her favorite authors were. Another couple, older, their faces lined by time but softened by smiles, looked over the children with warm patience, as though searching gently for someone whose presence might fill a quiet space in their home. Clara and Anna stood together, watching the small interactions unfold like tender winter blossoms. Then a soft-voiced woman turned toward them. She looked about 40, with dark hair pinned neatly beneath a knitted cap. Her wool shawl was carefully mended, its edges embroidered with tiny blue flowers. Her eyes, deep brown and gentle, settled on Clara and Anna with cautious warmth. "And who are these two?" she asked softly. The matron introduced them quietly. "Clara and Anna, 11 and 12. They've been good companions on the journey." The woman's expression softened further, a smile blooming slowly. "I had a sister growing up," she murmured. "A little older than me. We were inseparable." Her eyes glistened with a tenderness that felt like a candle flickering inside her chest. Clara held her breath. Anna squeezed her fingers again, but the woman didn't move closer. Not yet. Something held her back, something unspoken, a hesitation, a sadness perhaps softened by time. After a long, gentle look, she stepped back and gave the children a warm nod. "You're brave girls," she said. "Truly." Then she turned and joined the others, speaking with quiet thoughtfulness to the matron. Anna exhaled slowly, her breath forming a cloud in the winter air. "She seemed kind," she whispered. Clara nodded. Maybe she just wasn't ready yet. The villagers chose 3 children, 1 boy, 2 girls, and the matron guided them gently forward. Tears were shed by one of the girls, though they were soft tears mixed with hope and fear and the tremors of new beginnings. Clara watched with a tender ache, her heart full but not heavy. This wasn't her stop, not yet. But this village, nestled beneath the snowy ridge, felt like a place that whispered, "Soon, soon your turn will come." As the conductor called for boarding, Clara took one last look at the glowing windows of Winter Ridge Village, the warm lives inside, the soft curls of smoke, the gentle lights glimmering against the snow. She carried that warmth with her back onto the train, feeling it settle like a second scarf around her heart. The rails hummed softly as the train began to move once more, snowflakes drifting like tiny blessings across the windows. The train glided away from Winter Ridge Village with a long, low sigh of steam, its wheels settling once more into a steady, comforting rhythm. Clara watched the small town shrink into a cluster of golden specks beneath the hill until the ridge itself curved gently and hid the lights from view. Still, she felt their glow lingering behind her, warm and steady, like the memory of a kind voice. Anna leaned back into her seat, letting her blanket pull softly around her. "I like that village," she murmured. It felt gentle. Clara nodded, tracing a small circle on the frosted window with her fingertip. "It did, but maybe the place meant for us is still ahead." Anna smiled faintly. "I hope so." Outside the world had grown quieter again, vast white snowfields stretching far beyond the ridge, their surfaces smooth as silk and shining faintly under the moon's careful touch. Thin wisps of wind stirred the top layers of snow into soft, whispering swirls, lifting tiny flurries that danced across the fields like drifting feathers. It truly was a whispering world, muted and still, as though winter itself spoke in breaths too soft for words. The conductor passed down the aisle, checking on the children who had begun dozing again. He offered Clara a kind smile as he adjusted a lantern. "Long stretch ahead," he said softly. "Rest while you can." Clara settled deeper into her seat. The hum of the train was as steady as a heartbeat now, blending seamlessly with the quiet outside. The cold stove glowed with a low amber warmth that drifted all the way to the corners of the car, touching chilled cheeks and warming small hands. Beyond the windows, the snowfield spread endlessly, broken only by the occasional dark silhouette of a lone tree. its branches lifted upward like reaching arms, and the faint shimmer of frozen streams that curled gently through the land. The sky deepened into navy blue, dotted with a slow bloom of stars. The moon's glow softened, turning silver into pale pearl light that washed over the snow in delicate waves. Clara felt her eyelids grow heavy, lulled by the soothing world outside. She let herself drift, not quite asleep, not quite awake, floating somewhere in the peaceful in-between where dreams and thoughts braided gently together. Anna's voice, soft and slow, pulled her back. "Clara, do you ever wonder what our home will look like?" Clara turned her head slightly. "Sometimes, what do you imagine?" Anna thought for a long moment, her gaze deep in the whispering fields. "I imagine a place with a wide porch, and a fire that doesn't go out, and someone who calls us in from the cold even before we know we're cold." Clara smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "I like that, and you?" Anna asked softly. "What do you imagine?" Clara breathed in deeply, letting the scent of wool, pine smoke, and warm lantern oil fill her senses. "I imagine a window with curtains that move when the wind blows, and someone who reads stories out loud, and a shelf where I can put my paper star, somewhere it won't get lost." Anna reached out and squeezed her hand. "It won't be lost," she whispered. "It's waiting for its place." The whispering winds outside seemed to agree, brushing faintly against the train with a soft, rhythmic sigh. Hours passed like this, quiet, calm, gentle. The landscape rolled onward, the snowfields never fully breaking, but shifting in subtle ways. A cluster of rocks here, a faint line of animal tracks there, a thin curl of smoke from a distant farmhouse that Clara barely noticed before it vanished behind them. Slowly, the horizon brightened with the faintest hint of silver pink. Dawn was still far away, but the sky began to change in the subtle way winter nights sometimes did. Soft and patient, a promise forming long before the sun arrived. Clara watched it with a peaceful ache in her chest, knowing somehow that the night was carrying her towards something important. Not an ending. Not yet, but a turning point. Quiet, gentle, hidden in the snowfields. The train continued its steady journey westward, cutting a warm, glowing line through the silent world. And Clara, wrapped in her blanket and scarf, felt her heart steady, ready for whatever came next. The faint blush on the horizon deepened little by little as night began its slow surrender to morning. A few scattered stars still clung to the sky, their glow fragile against the rising light, but the land beneath them was already shifting, its edges softening into a gentle gray-blue dawn. The whispering snowfields outside the train seemed to stretch endlessly, smooth and quiet, like a world holding its breath. Clara brushed the fog from her window to get a clearer view. Anna stirred beside her, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is it morning already?" she murmured, voice warm with lingering dreams. "Almost," Clara said. "I think we're getting close to another stop." As if on cue, the conductor's calm voice floated down the aisle. "Next stop, Bell's Crossing. A small town, but a good one. Wait gently, children." A soft flutter moved through the car as the children adjusted their blankets, sat up, and peeked out the windows. The stove glowed with a deeper heat now, making the frosty air more bearable as the dawn crept slowly toward them. Clara pressed her palm to the window, the cold seeping gently into her skin. Ahead, she could see the faint outline of Bell's Crossing, a tiny settlement nestled near a fork in the road where two snowy paths merged into one. The town appeared gradually like a watercolor painting, taking form: a cluster of wooden houses with steep roofs, a small church with a bell tower dusted in snow, a general store with a porch swing hanging motionless in the winter stillness, smoke rising from chimneys curling into the pale morning air. A pair of lanterns on the platform glowing to welcome the approaching train. "Looks quiet," Anna whispered. "Quiet can be good," Clara replied, steadying her breath. The train slowed gently, releasing puffs of white steam that drifted softly across the platform. Bell's Crossing felt different from the other towns. Not warmer or colder, but calmer, as though time moved more slowly here, letting people tend to life at their own pace. A small group of townspeople waited, 5 or 6 adults bundled in heavy coats, hands tucked into mittens, their breaths drifting softly. A boy of about 14 stood with them, his expression shy but curious. The matron stepped out first, greeting them with a gentle nod. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," replied an older man with a kindly face. "Cold day for traveling." "Every day is a day worth traveling," the matron said softly. Clara and Anna stepped onto the platform with the others. Snow crunched beneath their boots, crisp and clean. The cold air carried the faint scent of cinnamon and wood smoke, perhaps from a bakery or kitchen, preparing for the day. A woman approached them, a tall woman with a long burgundy shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her face was lined by wind and worry, but her eyes were warm, holding a softness that Clara felt even before the woman spoke. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said to Clara. "And good morning to you, too," she added to Anna. They both murmured a polite good morning in return. The woman hesitated, then crouched to their level, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. "My husband and I lost our daughter last winter," she said gently, voice trembling like frost-bitten leaves. She was 12 and full of light. Clara's heart sank, heavy and tender. "I'm not looking to replace her," the woman whispered. "No one could, but our home has been too quiet since she passed, too still." She clasped her gloved hands together. "We wondered if maybe we might give another child a warm place again." Anna squeezed Clara's hand tightly, but the woman's gaze drifted not to them, but toward a younger girl, one of the smaller children, frightened and quiet. A girl who clung to her blanket as though it were the last warm thing in the world. The woman smiled gently and approached the girl. This wasn't their moment, and that was all right. Some homes needed smaller footsteps. Some hearts needed softer echoes. Clara watched as the woman knelt to the trembling girl, wrapping her shawl gently around her shoulders. The girl's tears came quickly but quietly, and the woman wiped them away with the tenderness of someone who had known both grief and love. Anna leaned toward Clara. "She made the right choice," she whispered. Clara nodded. She did. Other families stepped forward, meeting children with the same mix of hope and uncertainty found in every stop before. 2 boys were chosen, one for a farm, one for a workshop. A girl with a bright voice found a new home with a couple who cherished music. But Clara and Anna remained, hands clasped, hearts steady, breaths warm in the winter air. When the conductor called for boarding once more, the matron smiled at them both. "Not your stop," she said softly, "but we're getting closer." Clara believed her. Something in the quiet dawn, in the soft bells chiming faintly from the church tower, in the warm shawl of the grieving woman, it all whispered the same gentle truth. The journey was still unfolding, and not every chapter was meant to bring an ending. Some chapters were meant to bring strength. As the train pulled away from Bell's Crossing, Clara looked back at the snow-covered roofs, the lanterns fading, the soft figures waving goodbye. Her heart didn't ache. It waited, calm, hopeful, steady, ready for whatever dawn would bring next. As the train moved on from Bell's Crossing, the dawn finally claimed the sky in full. The first rays of sunlight stretched across the snowy horizon, spilling soft golden hues that melted gently into the lingering blues of night. Clara felt the warmth through the window. Not real heat, but the quiet promise of a new day. Anna sat straighter, rubbing her hands together near the lantern's glow. "It's brighter," she said. "Different from yesterday." Clara nodded. "Feels like the world is waking up." The train curved gently along the tracks, and soon the landscape opened into a breathtaking scene. A long frozen river winding like a pale ribbon through the morning fields. The sun struck its crystalline surface, making it shimmer with a light so bright and pure it seemed almost magical. "It looks like it's glowing," Anna whispered. Clara pressed closer to the window, breath fogging the glass. Like the river swallowed the sunrise. The frozen water glimmered with shades of white, silver, and faint gold. Snow cushioned the banks, forming soft drifts that leaned gently against clusters of willow trees. Their thin branches arced over the river in elegant sweeps, each one lined with delicate frost that sparkled as though dusted with powdered diamonds. The conductor stepped quietly through the aisle, pausing near the children who gazed at the scenery with awe. "Winterbend River," he explained, "frozen solid this time of year. Folks say it holds the morning light better than any mirror." Clara could see why. The light danced across the river's surface in shimmering waves, reflecting upward and illuminating the train car with subtle glints. Even the wooden walls seemed to glow faintly, warmed by the river's radiant beauty. Anna leaned her head against Clara's shoulder. "Do you think people skate on it?" she whispered. Clara imagined it. The soft scrape of blades against ice, children laughing, scarves trailing behind them like fluttering banners. "Maybe," she said. "Inns nearby, probably." As the train crossed a small bridge spanning the river's narrowest point, Clara felt a gentle tremble beneath her feet, the shudder of wheels over timber. The view from the bridge made her breath catch. Underneath, the ice glowed like a captured sunrise, light caught and frozen in time. The matron approached then, her steps slow and graceful. She paused beside Clara and Anna, looking out with them. "When I was a girl," she said softly, "my mother told me the river remembers every winter morning. Each one leaves a little light behind. And when the sun rises on days like this, it gives that light back." Clara whispered, "That's a lovely thought." "It was her way of telling me," the matron continued, "that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost, even in the coldest seasons." The words settled deep into Clara's heart. The frozen river felt like a symbol of everything they'd witnessed on this journey. Mrs. Turner's warm bread and hand-knitted scarves, Mr. Hale's apples and gentle lonely kindness, the lanterns along Lantern Path, the echoing bridge, silent pines wrapping them in winter hush, the cabin light burning steadily in the dark. Every town, every voice, every smile, all of it. Small pieces of light, and maybe like the river, Clara was gathering them, keeping them safe until she needed them. The train rolled farther along the riverbank before turning toward a region lined with distant hills. Birds perched on frosted branches, their feathers puffed against the cold. A few took flight, wings catching the morning light as they glided low across the frozen expanse. Clara watched them with quiet longing. They look free, she murmured. Anna smiled gently. We will be too. Clara nodded, feeling a warm certainty bloom inside her chest. Because somewhere at the end of all this, after the snowfields, after the lantern paths, after the quiet valleys and echoing bridges, there waited a home that would shine just as brightly as this river. A place where her paper star could rest, a place where her name could be spoken with warmth, a place where morning light would spill gently across her own window. The train gathered speed again, carrying them onward beneath the soft glow of dawn. And Clara felt ready, steady, and open for whatever waited on the next horizon. The morning sun climbed higher, casting longer golden rays across the snowy countryside. Shadows softened, and the world seemed to yawn awake, stretching its frosted edges as if welcoming the new day. Inside the train, the children stirred gently, their sleepy murmurs blending with the soft hum of the rails. Clara felt the warmth of the sun through the window, a quiet relief after so many cold, moonlit miles. She leaned forward, watching the light shimmer across the snow until something on the horizon caught her attention, a tall shape rising from the white landscape. At first, it was only a silhouette, but as the train rolled closer, its form became clearer. A windmill, tall, wooden, weathered by time, its blades dusted with snow, turning slowly in the crisp morning breeze. The structure stood on a small hill, watching over a valley of scattered farmhouses like a familiar sentinel. Anna gasped softly. It's beautiful, she whispered. Clara nodded, mesmerized, like something out of a story. The conductor, moving down the aisle, glanced out the window with a fond smile. Winterest, he said gently. We'll be stopping there shortly. Not a big place, but good folks live there. Waterrest, the name wrapped itself around Clara like a warm scarf. She felt something inside her stir, gentle, hopeful, curious. The train slowed as it approached the windmill. From this close, Clara could see the fine details, the thick wooden beams holding it upright, the thin ropes tied along the side to steady the structure, the sunlight catching on the snow resting in perfect lines along its blades. Birds perched on the windmill's crossbeams. Sparrows puffed up against the cold, tiny bodies warmed by the sunlight. Some fluttered away as the train passed, their wings stirring the frost from the roof. Anna whispered, "This feels like a good place." Clara didn't say it aloud, but she felt it too. As the train crept forward, Winterest revealed itself. A small but lively community tucked into a valley beneath the windmill. Houses were painted in soft, cheerful colors, sky blue, warm beige, faded red. White smoke twisted up from chimneys. A few people were already clearing paths through the snow, their shovels scraping rhythmically against the frosty ground. A large stable stood near the tracks, horses gently tossing their heads as the train pulled in. Their warm breath floated in clouds through the morning air. The platform was simple, wooden planks dusted with new snow, but it held a sense of welcome, as though it had been swept early in anticipation of their arrival. The matron gathered the children, her voice soft with encouragement. "Let's take a breath," she whispered. "Another chance awaits." Clara and Anna stepped onto the platform with the others. The air was bright and crisp, filled with the earthy scent of hay, wood smoke, and faintly baked bread cooling inside a nearby home. A woman approached them first. She had sturdy boots, a wool shawl, and kind eyes that sparkled softly with the reflection of the winter light. A little boy held her hand, peeking shilly from behind her coat. "Good morning," she said to the matron. "Winterest is happy to welcome you." Clara noticed how the woman's hand gently squeezed the boy's fingers, as though reassuring him as much as herself. Families gathered quietly around the children, their eyes warm but thoughtful. Some were young couples just starting their farms. Some were older with grown children living in far cities. Some held hands. Others stood alone but radiated a sense of longing, wanting to open their homes again, wanting to share warmth and purpose. A tall man with sandy hair knelt before a timid boy and offered him a small wooden toy horse he had carved. A couple spoke to a girl who loved animals, pointing toward their nearby stable. Another family listened to a child talk about her favorite things, smiling gently at every word. Clara and Anna stood close, waiting, breathing slowly. Then a woman stepped toward them, a middle-aged woman wearing a dark green cloak lined with fur. Her hair was braided neatly, and her cheeks were flushed from the cold. There was something grounding about her presence. Steady, warm, quietly strong. She knelt in front of the girls, meeting their eyes. "You're traveling together?" she asked gently. Clara nodded. "Since the start?" The woman's smile was soft, touched by something like understanding. "I have 2 rooms in my home," she said, "and plenty of space in my heart. I've thought for a long time, maybe it's time to share them." Anna held her breath. Clara felt her pulse quicken, but the woman didn't reach out yet. Her eyes shone with sincerity, but also with worry. She shook her head gently. "But I must be honest. I'm not sure I'm the right fit. Not today, not yet." Her voice wavered. "I'm learning how to be ready, and I don't want to choose before I truly am." Clara felt no sting, no disappointment, only respect. The woman stood and placed a gentle hand on Clara's shoulder. "You're both remarkable," she whispered. "Your home is coming. I feel it." Then she stepped away. Anna squeezed Clara's hand with relief and calm. "She's right," Anna breathed. "We're getting close." As families made their choices, a few children found homes in Winterest. One to help on a stable farm, another to join a lively household filled with laughter. Soon, the conductor signaled that departure was near. Clara looked up at the windmill one last time. Its blades turned slowly, catching the light, cutting quiet circles in the crisp winter breeze. It felt like a sign, the world moving, turning gently, bringing them closer with every sweep. As the train pulled away, Clara felt her hope deepen, not like a leap, but like roots quietly growing in the soft soil of her chest. Somewhere ahead, a door was waiting to open, and she and Anna would walk through it together. The train moved on from Winterest, leaving behind the windmill's slow-turning blades and the softly colored homes tucked beneath their snowy valley. Clara watched the village fade gently into the horizon, its warmth lingering in her heart. The sun had climbed a little higher now, but its winter light remained tender, painting the snow in soft gold. For a time the journey felt peaceful, almost dreamlike. The children settled into their seats with blankets tucked under their chins. Some hummed softly, others whispered about the families they'd just met. Anna rested her head lightly against Clara's shoulder, lulled by the steady rhythm of the train and the comfort of knowing their path was still unfolding. Then Clara noticed a shift in the air, subtle, barely there. A faint tension brushing along the window's edge. "What is it?" Anna murmured, sensing her stillness. Clara peered outside the sky. "It looks a little different," and it did. To the east, a long stretch of gray cloud, thin and wispy at first, had begun to gather along the horizon. But unlike the fierce storm from earlier in their journey, this one seemed softer, slower, drifting like a deep exhale across the sky. The conductor approached then, his boots quiet on the wooden floor. "Don't be alarmed," he said kindly. "The weather's changing a bit. Nothing dangerous, just a returning snowfall. A peaceful storm, a quiet one." Still, the shift in the air was unmistakable. Wind brushed gently against the windows, carrying with it a whisper of cold. The lanterns in the car flickered slightly, their flames dancing like delicate yellow feathers. Anna pulled her blanket closer. "Do you think it'll be bad?" Clara shook her head. "No, I think it'll be beautiful." And as if the world agreed, the first snowflakes began to fall. They drifted slowly, lazily, each one unique, each one glimmering as it floated past the glass. The flakes were larger than earlier, soft and full, like tiny white blossoms carried by an invisible hand. The sky dimmed just enough to give the falling snow a silvery glow. The land softened beneath it, every tree branch collecting tiny piles of white that grew with each passing minute. The matron rose from her seat and moved thoughtfully through the aisles, adjusting the wicks of the lanterns and making sure each child was wrapped warmly. "It's just winter." Speaking a little louder, she said with a smile. Outside, the falling snow thickened, not in a frightening rush, but in a gentle cascade that looked like a slow-motion snowfall from a dream. The air around the train blurred into white wisps, turning the world into a soft, shaded watercolor painting. The rails hummed steadily beneath them, unfazed by the drifting storm. The cold stove glowed deeper, its warmth spreading like a comforting hand behind their backs. Clara placed her palm against the window and watched the snow gather on the ledge. "It's like the sky is tucking us in," she whispered. Anna smiled sleepily. "With the softest blanket." A few children nearby began to hum again, their small voices blending with the sound of the snowfall tapping against the roof. Even the conductor hummed along under his breath. The train pressed forward through the whitened world, its lantern-lit windows glowing warmly from inside, making it look like a traveling hearth drifting through a winter dream. For a long stretch, Clara sat quietly, letting the moment settle deep inside her. She thought about everything she and Anna had seen: the whispering plains, the comforting bridge, the lantern path glowing in the snow, Pinebrook's gentle warmth, winter crests, windmill turning slowly in the cold breeze. And now this, a snowfall so soft it felt like a lullaby. Clara felt her heart swell gently like a lantern being filled with steady, warm light. "This journey is changing us," she murmured. Anna nodded, her voice drifting like a feather. "I think it's showing us who we're becoming." The snow continued to fall, wrapping the world in a calm white stillness. The train moved steadily forward, a glowing thread of warmth in the quiet storm. And Clara knew more clearly than ever before that the home waiting ahead would be the one that recognized this new version of her, braver, softer, steadier. The storm was not a threat, it was a reminder, a breath, a gentle turning of the page. The quiet snowfall continued as the train pushed farther west, the flakes drifting like tiny white feathers caught in the slow exhale of winter. The world outside the windows blurred into soft shades of silver and pearl, the landscape fading gently into the storm's tender embrace. Yet the journey felt peaceful. Warm lantern light glowing along the aisle, children curled beneath blankets, the steady hum of the wheels beneath their feet. As the morning deepened, Clara noticed something new, a faint spreading brightness far ahead. Not sunlight exactly, more like a glow rising from the ground rather than falling from the sky. Anna blinked awake beside her. "Do you see that, I think?" Clara leaned closer. "I think it's a town." The conductor stepped quietly into the aisle, nodding as he followed their gaze. "Next stop," he said softly, "is Prairie Sky." The name felt warm on Clarara's tongue. It felt like possibility. The snowfall slowed as they approached, giving way to a calmer, clearer world. Prairie Sky revealed itself in gentle lines. A stretch of open land where the snow thinned into smooth waves. A cluster of cozy houses gathered close together, painted in warm shades of ochre, pine green, and deep red. A tall barn with a weathered roof, its sides decorated by wind-carved snowdrifts. A rope swing hanging from a sturdy oak tree. The only splash of movement as it swayed in the light breeze. And in the center of the town, a beautiful wooden archway, carved with delicate patterns marking the entrance to the main street. As the train slowed, Clarara noticed something. Something that made her breath catch gently in her throat. A large crowd had gathered on the platform, more than at any stop before. Families, couples, older folks with kind eyes. A few children bundled in thick scarves and mittens, all of them watching the train with hopeful, quiet anticipation. Anna whispered, "There are so many." Clarara nodded. Maybe this is why the little storm returned. The matron stood and guided the children toward the doors. "Take your time," she said gently. "Step forward when your heart tells you to." When Clarara stepped onto the platform, she felt it. The air warmer, the wind softer, as though Prairie Sky itself had opened its arms. Lanterns hung from posts along the platform, though it was morning. Their golden light flickered like small, watchful flames. Several families brought baskets of warm bread or blankets stitched with careful, loving hands. Clarara and Anna stood side by side, breathing in the soft scent of hay, pine, and something sweet drifting from a nearby bakery. A tall woman with freckles stepped forward first. She wore a long coat lined with sheep's wool and had warm eyes that seemed to hold years of kindness. She spoke gently with one of the older boys, her voice soft as snow. A couple with matching scarves knelt beside a shy girl, offering her a knitted doll with golden yarn hair. An older man with a walking stick approached a boy who loved clocks, showing him a small brass pocket watch etched with stars. A gentle hum filled the air. Voices, laughter, hesitant introductions, the soft sound of families forming. Clarara felt her heartbeat quicken. She and Anna held hands, steadying one another as families glanced their way, some with thoughtful consideration, others with quiet curiosity. Then, from the back of the crowd, a couple stepped forward, a man and a woman, both in their late 30s, dressed in well-worn coats, dusted with snow. Their faces were soft and open, holding the unmistakable tenderness of people who had loved deeply and lost something precious along the way. The woman had light hair pulled back neatly beneath a knitted cap. The man had gentle eyes that crinkled slightly when he smiled. They approached Clara and Anna slowly, hands clasped, breaths rising lightly in the cold. "Hello," the woman said, her voice warm and steady. "I'm Margaret," she added softly, "and this is my husband, Jonas." Jonas nodded, offering a small smile. "We've been waiting for the train," he said, "hoping we might meet someone who feels right." Clarara swallowed gently, her fingers tightening around Anna's. Anna's breath trembled just slightly, though her eyes remained bright. Margaret knelt down so she was level with the girls. "You two seem very close," she said softly. "Are you sisters?" Anna shook her head. "No, but we've been together for a long time since the start." Clarara added quietly, "We help each other not feel alone." Margaret's eyes softened even more. shining with something Clara couldn't quite name, something between tenderness and recognition. Jonas knelt beside his wife. "We lost a child 2 winters ago," he said gently. "She was 10. We haven't been ready to open our home again." His voice wavered for a moment, but this winter felt different. We felt ready to hope again. Clara's heart thudded softly. Anna's hand trembled slightly in hers. Margaret looked from one girl to the other, her gaze careful. "We don't want to split companions," she said. "Not if you need each other." Clara felt her breath catch. Anna's eyes widened with quiet, trembling hope, but then Margaret's expression changed ever so slightly. A flicker of hesitation, a tremble of uncertainty. Jonas took a slow breath. "We aren't sure," he said softly. "If we can care for 2, not yet." Anna's fingers slipped from Clara's hand, but before sadness could settle, Margaret reached forward and touched each of their gloved hands. "You 2 are wonderful," she whispered. "Truly, and someone will see that the moment they look at you. We just know we're meant for one child right now. But you," she looked directly at Clara, "then Anna are meant to stay together as long as you need to." Clara felt no tears, no disappointment, only a quiet understanding. The couple stood, offering warm goodbyes before moving gently on. Anna exhaled slowly. "That was close," she whispered, "but I think it wasn't meant for us." Clara nodded. "Not every door is meant to open." The platform buzzed with soft voices and gentle excitement. Several children were chosen. Others waited quietly. Clara and Anna stood together, their hearts calm, steady, filled with the warmth of the soft snowfall and the gentle glow of prairie sky. The matron approached them, kneeling with a warm smile. "You 2," she said, "are almost home."